Chapter 312. At that moment, Iwasaki Yanosuk really thought that he was having a nightmare. He pinched his thigh and realized that it did hurt. Only then did he realize that it was not a nightmare but real. Tong Sheng. Ryuto. Although it was only 4 words, it was extremely difficult for Iwasaki to say. It was as if every word required all his strength. How is this possible? Why is this guy here? How did he get in? When did he get in? For a moment, Iwasaki Yanosuk's mind was filled with questions. Even so, he reached out his hand and smashed a special button beside the bed as fast as he could. As the president of the Great Japanese Bank, as well as the Golden Heron of Yatsuke, Iwasaki had encountered countless assassinations, kidnappings, and threats in his life. Naturally, he had his own way of dealing with them. As long as Iwasaki smashed the button, his bed would immediately sink down and fall from the 3rd floor to the absolute safety of the basement. It was guaranteed that his life would not be in danger. At the same time, the hundreds of bodyguards outside the mansion would swarm in. The 3 police agencies nearby would also immediately rush over in their police cars. They would not let a single criminal escape. In the past many years, this perfect safety measure had saved Iwasaki's life countless times. Unfortunately, it would not work today. Before Iwasaki smashed the button, Ryuto had already reached out his left thumb and middle finger and lightly flicked his shoulder. 2 fingers. Just 2 fingers lightly flicked. But Iwasaki, who was flicked on the shoulder, felt his right hand go numb. His entire arm drooped down rapidly as if it was injected with an anesthetic. He could not even move a finger. But, damn it! After realizing that he could not press the emergency button quickly, Iwasaki quickly took out a pistol from under his pillow with his other hand and pulled the trigger at Ryuto's head without hesitation. Click! However, before Iwasaki could pull the trigger, a strong gust of wind swept past, and the small handgun in his hand completely disappeared. Only the handle and the trigger were left. It was as if it was a magic trick. Seeing Iwasaki's astonished expression, Ryuto couldn't help but laugh. What do you think? What other tricks do you have up your sleeve? It wasn't that Ryuto looked down on Iwasaki, but he was already strong enough to ignore most firearms. This was especially true for an ordinary old man who had not undergone much special training. It was simply impossible for him to deal with him with a pistol. In Ryuto's opinion, it was no different from a 3-year-old child stabbing someone with a toothpick. This is bad. This is bad. With Iwasaki's intelligence and understanding of the evils of society, how could he not know what Ryuto was up to when he returned and even sneaked into his bedroom? There was no doubt that Ryuto was here to kill him this time. And it wasn't an assassination, but an open one. What to do? This bastard is too strong. I have no way of escaping from him. I can't even call for help. Is this the only way? No matter what, Iwasaki definitely didn't want to die. So after thinking for a second, the president of the Great Japanese Bank did something that he was very familiar with. In front of the young Ryuto, Iwasaki quickly lowered his head and said, "I'm very sorry. I beg you to let me live. As long as you don't kill me, you can have anything you want." The world was bustling, and everyone came for profit. The world was bustling, and everyone went for profit. As a businessman, Iwasaki didn't believe that there was anything that couldn't be solved with money. If it couldn't be solved, then it meant that the money wasn't enough. So even if Ryuto was in his bedroom, Iwasaki still planned to pay a price in exchange for his life. And he believed that Ryuto would accept it. Oh! Ryuto heard this and laughed happily. He laughed and mocked. "Are you an idiot? Don't tell me you think that you can deal with me with money at this time? Listen to me first." Iwasaki was also a ruthless person. He proposed without hesitation, "In order to show my sincerity, I can hand over 10% of the shares of the Great Japanese Bank. The market value is more than $10 billion. Is this enough money? 10% of the shares of the Great Japanese Bank? The market value is more than $10 billion. It had to be said that even with Ryuto's current wealth, he couldn't help but hold his breath when he heard this number. $10 billion. What kind of concept was this? Half a year ago, the $10 million he had robbed from John was equivalent to 1 billion Japanese yen. This $10 billion was 1,000 times the $10 million, which was equivalent to 1 trillion Japanese yen. If you couldn't understand how exaggerated this amount of money was from this number alone, it was as long as 1100000000000, which was an astronomical number. Although $10 billion of shares was not equal to $10 billion of cash, just holding so many shares of the great Japanese bank was already a super powerful force, a force that could shake the country. Speaking of which, this 10% of the shares of the great Japanese bank could be said to be the greatest achievement of Iwasaki's life. Even excluding the shares, all his remaining assets added together may not be as valuable as these shares. It could be said to be his lifeblood in the true sense. But at this time, in order to survive, Iwasaki did not hesitate to give away his lifeblood. After all, if he lost his life, what was the use of his lifeblood? This country bumpkin must have never seen such a large amount of money. He would definitely be tempted. After seeing the slight change in Ryuto's expression, Iwasaki finally felt relieved. But in the next second, the young man smiled and shook his head. He sneered and said, $10 billion worth of shares is indeed not bad. But compared to making a deal with you, I'd rather take your life and then slowly raid your house. At that time, I think I'll make more money. Raid my house? When he heard this, Iwasaki was shocked. He didn't think that there was such a thing as raiding in this modern society. Wasn't this too ridiculous? So he quickly shook his head and said, "Wait, I can promise you if something happens to me, the things you get will definitely not be as valuable as these shares. At least, you won't get these shares." "Is that so?" "I think after killing you, I can get these shares. Anyway, the beneficiary of your assets must be your daughter Iwasaki Reiko, right? Just start with her, she's the daughter-in-law of the Komiyoshi clan, hee. Ha!" The moment he heard this name, Iwasaki couldn't help but widen his eyes. Indeed, Iwasaki did not make a will, and his wife had already passed away. If he mysteriously died, all his assets would definitely go to his daughter Reiko. Coincidentally, Iwasaki Reiko's fiancé was filial piety Kanzaki, a member of the Komiyoshi clan. In a situation where Iwasaki Yanasuke couldn't interfere, if Reiko and filial piety got married, it would be equivalent to joining the Komiyoshi clan and becoming a member of their clan. At that time, when Iwasaki Yanasuke died, Reiko would naturally inherit the family business, and the Komiyoshi clan could use all kinds of methods to rightfully harvest all of Iwasaki's assets. It wasn't easy to steal from Iwasaki, but it was different to steal from Reiko. It was like picking it up from the ground. How could this be? After understanding the meaning of Ryuto's words, Iwasaki's head drooped, as if he suddenly aged 10 years. Originally, he wanted to find someone from the Komiyoshi clan to be his son-in-law so that after Rue Huey's fall, he would have a legitimate, reasonable reason to annex the Komiyoshi clan. Who knew that this plan would unexpectedly become a foreshadowing, a tool that Ryuto used instead. Thank you for publicly holding the engagement banquet between Reiko and filial piety. Thank you for giving us a legitimate, reasonable reason to annex all of your assets. You're a good person, rest in peace. Wait. I still have something to say. Boom. Before Iwasaki could finish his sentence, Ryudo's palm landed on his heart like a bolt of lightning. With one strike, Iwasaki fell onto the bed with lifeless eyes. Although he didn't die on the spot, he wasn't far from death. After killing Iwasaki, Ryuto picked up the phone and quickly dialed Rue Huey's number. "Hello, Ryuto-kun, are you done on your side?" After the call connected, Rue Huey's elegant and mature voice came from the other side. "Done. That old man Iwasaki will die in an hour. Now go and arrange the marriage between Reiko and filial piety." "No problem, the registration will be completed in 15 minutes. Also, how's Yoshiyuki? Perhaps he was too traumatized and has some mental problems. I've arranged for someone to take care of him for the rest of his life. You don't have to care about this person anymore. Although Rue Hui's words were very tactful, it wasn't easy to say how Yoshiyuki ended up with mental problems. Ryuto was too lazy to ask. After all, he was just a traitor. Even if he died, he wouldn't die in vain. Just like that, after settling the matter on Iwasaki's side, Ryuto quietly jumped out of the window and left Iwasaki's mansion along the path he came from. Not long after, Iwasaki's personal doctor noticed his boss's abnormal condition and hurriedly sent him to the hospital for emergency treatment. Unfortunately, due to Iwasaki's old age and the unknown condition of his heart, the hospital declared that the emergency treatment failed after an hour. The life of the Golden Heron thus came to an end. Before Iwasaki was declared dead, the marriage registration between Iwasaki Reiko and filial piety Kanzaki had been completed. This also meant that the career that Iwasaki Yaosuke had worked so hard for his entire life would soon belong to the Kamiyoshi. The Golden Heron had fallen, and the hidden dragon had soared. From this moment onwards, Ryuto, the Supreme Emperor, had truly reached the pinnacle of his life. He had become a top-notch big shot with assets in the tens of billions. Of course, it would take some time to complete this invasion. Moreover, Ryuto had other things to do that night. Or rather, the colored glaze had other things to prepare for him. Chapter 313. When Ryuto returned to the Rulon Group HQ, the sky was already completely dark. Colored Glaze was currently in his room. She was furiously writing at the familiar desk while thinking hard. She would even rub her head from time to time. Although she had received news from Ryuto that Iwasaki was dead, even if Iwasaki was dead, they still had a lot of things to do. It was far from time to rest. For example, how to push Tsukujiri Kyoji to the position of Golden Heron, how to swallow all of Iwasaki's family's assets, who should fill the vacant position of Dark Crow after Kyoji's departure, and so on. Thinking about it carefully, there were just too many problems. Especially after Iwasaki's death, the other 2 Golden Herons and 10 Dark Crows would inevitably be in danger. They had to be split up in advance before they formed a united front. Even though Lapis Lazuli now had the 3 trump cards of the Kanzaki family, Black Hand Alliance, and Tsukujiri Group, in this complicated period where undercurrents were surging, it was easy to capsize in all kinds of places if they didn't make good arrangements. Phew. After thinking for a long time, Colored Glaze couldn't help but sigh. Although she was much more resourceful than ordinary people, it was still very tiring to think so much every day. But recently, when Colored Glaze was tired from thinking, she would raise her left hand to look at the dove blood red ring that looked like it was flowing with flames. This is an engagement ring. I actually have an engagement ring. It's quite unbelievable. For Colored Glaze, in the past year, too many things had happened. A year ago, she was just a canary living in a birdcage. She seemed to have a noble identity, but unfortunately, this identity could only lock her future deep in the shrine, becoming a noble chess piece. Just like her mother before and her aunt now. She didn't know when it started, but Lioli had lost her desire for love and the future. Instead, she became numb to it. Every day, she would just casually get by and forget about it. But a year ago, ever since the kidnapping incident in the warehouse that was emitting the sea breeze, Lu Li's life finally took a turn for the better. In just a year, a shiny engagement ring was on her finger. This was something that Lioli didn't even dare to dream about in the past. Just as Colored Glaze was staring at the ring on her finger in a daze, a pair of warm hands quietly reached out from behind and covered her clear eyes. "Guess who I am?" The person's voice came from behind Colored Glaze. His childish words made her want to laugh, but she still shook her head and laughed. "I don't know, probably a kidnapper with bad intentions." "Good fellow, you're still thinking about this even after so long." After hearing Colored Glaze's words, Ryuto curled his lips in puzzlement. He picked up the girl sitting on the chair and sat on the chair himself. Then, he put the girl's perky butt on his lap and sat down. "It's been hard on you recently." At this time, Ryuto held Colored Glaze in his arms and leaned his head on her shoulder. But his eyes were looking at the large pile of folders, diaries, phones, computers, tablets, and other tools on the table in front of him. Because there were a lot of things to do recently, Colored Glaze's work was also very heavy. She even took a long leave from school and stayed in the office for many days. At this time, Colored Glaze reached out and touched Ryuto's face without turning her head, and calmly replied, "At least you still have some conscience. You still know to come and greet me. Of course, you're my virtuous wife. How can I not care about you?" Virtuous wife. What about those two? Who are those two? When Colored Glaze mentioned those two, there was a slight fluctuation in her tone. It was obvious that she still had some resentment in her heart. Usually, when Ryuto and Colored Glaze were together, they wouldn't talk about Dunya and Yunyen. After all, there were some things that were better left unsaid. There was no need to say it out loud. However, it was clear that because of the 2 previous trips, Lu Li's resentment had been especially obvious recently. Even though he had given her a ring first and confirmed her identity as his legal wife, she would still occasionally feel dissatisfied. After feeling Colored Glaze's dissatisfaction, Ryuto, who was hugging her, smiled and said in her ear, "Those two are my lovers and you're my wife. There's no contradiction in this, right? Who's your wife? Shameless." Suddenly, Colored Glaze turned her face away, as if she didn't want to talk to this shameless guy anymore. That's right. Judging from the situation after Long Do took the other two on a trip, Lioli obviously knew what the 3 of them were doing outside. It was nothing more than a hole-in-one thing. As for this so-called home run, a dignified, generous, and classic young lady like Colored Glaze wouldn't think about it. Probably not. Especially when Ryuto hugged her like this, Colored Glaze couldn't help but think of the other 2 women he hugged like this. As for those 2 women, Ryuto probably didn't just hug them. Maybe he did this, that, and this and that. Thinking of this, Colored Glaze couldn't help but sigh slightly. Although Colored Glaze's sigh was very light, Ryuto still felt it. As expected, Colored Glaze still had some issues with me, Yunyen, and Dunya. Fine, I still have to do this. After feeling the dissatisfaction in the girl's heart, Ryuto took a deep breath, suddenly reached out and grabbed Colored Glaze's back and legs, and carried her up in a princess carry. Sigh. Before Colored Glaze could react, her body flew to the side of the bed and landed on the soft bed. This was Ryuto's room, so the bed was naturally Ryuto's bed. When Colored Glaze was placed on the bed, Ryuto took advantage of the situation and pressed her firmly under his body. "Stop fooling around, I haven't finished my work." After being suddenly pushed, Colored Glaze couldn't help but frown. Some things are more important than work. For example, the wedding night. Long Do, on the other hand, kissed Lu Li's cheek, then reached out and hugged the young girl's slender waist. Nuptial night? What do you mean? Colored Glaze showed a puzzled expression when she heard this. After all, there was no such thing here. Naturally, Long Do wasn't stingy with explaining to this adorable young lady what a bridal chamber was and what a candlelight night was. First of all, the wedding night is the bridal room where the bride and groom sleep during the wedding. And then on the wedding night, what the 2 of them will do. I don't think I need to say it, hee. Oh. After understanding Ryuto's meaning, Colored Glaze's pretty face flushed red. Wasn't it obvious what the bride and groom would do on the wedding night? Of course, the bride and groom would cover themselves with a quilt on the bed and discuss the origin of mankind, the development of mankind, and the future of mankind. Although Colored Glaze did think about this, she didn't expect Ryuto to suddenly make this kind of request. This kind of, hole-in-one-shot request. But Colored Glaze still hurriedly said, "Wait, didn't we say we would do it on the wedding night?" That was because we were worried about the inventory of the Kamiyoshi and the pressure of Yatsuki. Now you think these 2 problems are still a problem? Forget it, then why do we have to wait until the wedding? From the beginning, Colored Glaze, as the next vegetarian king, had to maintain her purity, or else she would be punished by Yatsuki. Therefore, no matter how good their relationship was, they could only hug, kiss, and touch each other, and couldn't really do anything. But now it was different, the situation was different. Today, when Ryuto, Colored Glaze, Rue Hui, Kyoji, and the others worked together to kill Iwasaki, Yatsuki would enter an era where these forces could be seen with the naked eye. In this kind of situation where they could cover the sky with one hand, what was the problem of vegetarian king chastity? Even a year later, whether or not this inhumane vegetarian king system would still exist was still a question. So now Ryuto could be said to have thrown caution to the wind. After he heard Color Glaze's sigh, he decided to give her the same treatment as Yunyen and Dunya, the same treatment of transforming from a girl into a woman. This. After hearing Ryuto's words, Colored Glaze realized that he seemed to be serious. In essence, Colored Glaze didn't dislike being hugged by Ryuto, but this sudden request was a bit too sudden, and the girl didn't know how to react for a moment. On the soft bed, the girl's body trembled slightly, like a little white rabbit that was about to be eaten by a big gray wolf. Although Colored Glaze didn't know about the matters between men and women, when she thought that she was about to experience it, she couldn't help but feel nervous. After feeling his first wife's nervousness, Ryuto reached out and held her chin, and gently smiled. "It's okay, just relax. If you're too nervous, you might not be able to go in." Wait, I feel like I'm still not ready, why don't we? Just when Colored Glaze was about to say, "Why don't we come back another time?" Ryuto had already lowered his head and kissed her, and took out a small steel ball and directly hit the light bulb switch on the wall not far away. Pa! Accompanied by a soft sound, Ryuto's room was suddenly shrouded in thick darkness. Tonight, the moon was bright and the stars were sparse. The air was already cold in the winter. But as Colored Glaze in the room gradually entered the zone under the guidance of a skilled person, the pitch-black bedroom was filled with a feeling of spring that even the moonlight shyly hid in the clouds. 3,000 words omitted. Chapter 3:14. That night, just as Ryuto was gently bringing Colored Glaze up the stairs of the Lord's mansion. On the other side of the Kamishiro Imperial Garden, a woman who looked quite similar to Colored Glaze was looking at the bright moon hanging high in the sky with a thoughtful expression. Although it was the middle of winter, the moon was still as bright as ever and wasn't covered by the cold wind and dark clouds in the air. "What's going on? I keep feeling uneasy, as if something is about to happen." Currently, the woman who was standing in a garden in the Kamishiro Imperial Garden, and looking at the moonlight in the sky was naturally the owner of this place, Kaneshiro Ruehue. Currently, Ruehue was wearing a very simple white robe with long sleeves, which set off her elegant figure and made her seem as elegant as a fairy under the moonlight. Today, Kaneshiro Ruehue could be said to have welcomed the first great victory in her life. Originally, the motion that Iwasaki Yaosuke had initiated against this Kamiyoshi was completely rejected, and the golden heron Yatsuki was also facing the end of his life. At the same time, Ruehue also secretly cleaned up the Kamiyoshi clan that followed Yoshiyuki and his father. She also threw Yoshiyuki into a mental hospital and let him spend the rest of his life there. As for Kaneshiro filial piety, he was going to be used as a chess piece to take over all of Iwasaki Reiko's assets. If he cooperated, she would let him live. If he didn't, then she could only send him to the mental hospital to reunite with his father. After finishing all of her work, the current situation could be said to be great. Even Ruehue herself didn't expect that the Yatsuki would be defeated so quickly under the continuous attacks. Of course, the Yatsuki couldn't be blamed for being useless. It could only be said that Ruehue, Colored Glaze, Ryuto, and Kyoji were too powerful when they worked together. Especially Ryuto, his unscrupulous style of doing things with the Black Hand Alliance made many people feel true fear. After Iwasaki's death, people were even more worried about this monster organization that could easily assassinate the Golden Heron. But it didn't matter. What Ruehue needed to do next was to rope in some of the Yatsuki and suppress some of them. Before the other two Golden Herons could organize a countermeasure, she would push Kyoji to the position of Golden Heron. This way, the situation would be settled. Until now, up to this point, Ruehue didn't feel that there was anything wrong with the current situation. So, she should be drinking in her room to sleep, happily and having a good dream. She shouldn't be here in the cold wind in the middle of the night. But for some reason, Ruehue had a feeling that something was about to happen. This feeling didn't make any sense, and there was no evidence to support it, but she still felt that way. Since ancient times, the Kamiyoshi kings were believed to have strong spiritual power and could predict the future. Although Rue Hui, who had once been the vegetarian king, knew that the so-called spiritual power was actually nonsense, she still had the ability to foresee the future. Just like tonight, Rue Hui could clearly sense a strange aura in the air. It was as if a sharp blade would pierce through the darkness at any moment and take away her life as the leader of the Kamikaze clan. But that shouldn't be possible, right? Not to mention the perfect defense system around the Kamiyoshi Imperial Garden, just the dozens of carefully trained guardian ninjas inside the garden was enough to make all assassins in the world despair. After all, when it came to assassination, ninjas were the true experts. And the guardian ninjas, who protected the Kamiyoshi tribe for generations, were not only proficient in assassination, but also in all kinds of methods to counter assassination. So, ever since Rue Hui fell out with Ayam, she had suffered countless assassination attempts, but she had never been touched by the assassins sent by Ayam. Come to think of it, that guy should be attacking soon. Thinking of the girl who was only in her 20s, but had already fallen deep into the bottomless abyss, Rue Hui couldn't help but sigh. After all, a long time ago, she had experienced an unforgettable time with that little girl, but unfortunately, in the end, the fate of the two still stepped into the reincarnation of their ancestors. Unknowingly, Rue Hui was immersed in the memories of the past, immersed in the memories of herself and Ayam. Even if more than 10 years had passed, Rue Hui couldn't forget the strong shock she felt when she first saw the young Ayam. It was a meeting in the unseen world, a meeting between Golden Osmanthus and Black Rose that shouldn't have happened. It was a night 18 years ago, even the colored glaze hadn't been born yet, and Rue Hui had just taken off the burden of vegetarian king and broke free from nearly 20 years of house arrest. And just when Rue Hui walked alone in the cold night, came to the osmanthus tree next to a lake in the suburbs of Tokyo to enjoy the flowers, she unexpectedly met the little girl who was standing alone by the lake. In the remote suburbs, the night as deep as the abyss and the lakeside. Under Rue Hui's surprised gaze, the little girl was waving her tender little hands, nailing beautiful butterflies to the tree with mallets and nails. What are you doing? Seeing the hundreds of wings nailed to the tree, which looked cruel and full of strange beauty, Rue Hui couldn't help but ask the child. Catching butterflies, and then, playing with butterflies. Facing Rue Hui's question, the little girl who looked at most 6 or 7 years old turned her head slightly, using the pair of clear pupils to look at the big sister who suddenly appeared. Even now, Rue Hui had to admit that when she first saw Ayam, she really had a feeling of being attracted by the girl's unusual beauty and strange temperament. At that time, Yongji was still a delicate little girl who looked like she was carved out of jade. She looked very petite and cute. Her facial features were so delicate that people suspected that a finely crafted doll came to life. Her black and beautiful long hair was casually draped behind her back, and her expression was indifferent. She didn't look like an ordinary 6 or 7-year-old girl. Under the moonlight, the lakeside, under the osmanthus tree, the silver light was everywhere, and the lake water was flowing. The girl quietly bathed in that layer of brilliance, as if integrated into this beautiful dreamlike scene. Even though Rue Hui was a woman, she couldn't help but think that this little girl was really too beautiful. She was like a legendary lakeside fairy or a moonlight fairy. It was hard to imagine how beautiful this little girl would be when she grew up. Of course, the legendary elves wouldn't do such a wicked thing as catching so many butterflies and nailing them to the tree. Therefore, Rue Hui made the initial judgment of the girl, a naughty child with an impeccable appearance and temperament, but with a very strange temperament. But even if the girl did such a thing, Rue Hui didn't have any prejudice against her at first. After all, many children would do things like crushing ants and throwing stones at birds when they were young. After all, the 3 views of young children hadn't been formed yet. No matter what they did, the first blame had to be carried by the parents. It could only be blamed on the parents for not giving the correct guidance. Thinking of this, Rue Hui, who had just come out of the Tianjai Divine Palace, became excited and started chatting with the little girl by the lake. You can catch butterflies, but after catching them, don't nail them to the tree. That way, the butterflies will die, understand? Like a young mother educating her little daughter, Rue Hui pulled her to sit under the tree and patiently guided her. But after hearing Ruehue's words, the girl asked in confusion, "Butterflies will die. Is there something wrong with that? All living things will die. So will you, so will I. So will all living things." Hearing the girl's reply, Ruehue couldn't help but be stunned. After all, she didn't expect such a young girl to be able to say such philosophical words. But even so, Ruehue still smiled and said, "Indeed, the birth and death of all things is a part of the heavenly cycle, but that's the law of nature. It's not something we should actively interfere with." In other words, I can't kill butterflies? The little girl blinked and asked again, "But people are clearly killing chickens, fish, and pigs every day. Isn't this against the law of nature?" It's not that humans can't take the lives of animals, but that's based on a need and not for a moment of fun. Seeing that the little girl seemed to be more intelligent than her peers, Ruehue explained the meaning of the existence of chickens, ducks, pigs, and cows. Ruehue didn't object to killing for survival or other practical needs. She wasn't the kind of person who overflowed with Mother Mary's heart. She also knew that the survival of humans couldn't be separated from the demands of other creatures. But if it wasn't for survival or other practical needs to kill, this was a very bad situation in Ruehue's view. It was absolutely not allowed. After telling these things to the little girl, she was silent for a moment, then said something that Ruehue didn't expect. "The reason why I kill butterflies is not to play with them, but if I don't do this, I can't feel the feeling of being alive." Under the lush osmanthus tree, the little girl looked at the butterflies that she nailed to the tree, and a strong sense of malice flashed in her eyes. That's right, malice. It was hard to imagine that such a young girl would have such obvious malice. This also showed that she was fundamentally different from normal humans. From the beginning, the little girl didn't come to this world to live. The only reason she was born was to kill, the more the better, the faster the better, and the more ruthless the better. But unfortunately, Ruehue didn't notice the malice in her eyes at that time. If Ruehue saw his expression, she might have made a different decision. Unfortunately, it was too late to say anything now. What a strange child. In the end, Ruehue couldn't persuade the little girl to stop doing such things. She didn't even ask about her identity, and only knew that she lived nearby. Seeing that the night was getting darker, Ruehue, who was preparing to go home, made a promise with the little girl to meet here tomorrow night. The little girl nodded, turned around, and walked to the side of the winding path. Soon, she disappeared into the darkness. Chapter 3:15. What a strange child. But for some reason, I feel like I'm destined to meet her. After Ruehue shook her head and left, she arrived at the lakeside the next day at around the same time as promised and saw the strange little girl again. But this time, Ruehue didn't come empty-handed. She also brought her favorite toy when she was a child, Oshiki Featherboard. The so-called Oshiki Featherboard was actually a simple way to play badminton. It was said that during the Edo period, every first month, the adults would give a girl a rectangular drawing board with a pattern on it and a handle on the bottom. It meant to ward off evil spirits. Later, when the female officials in the palace were bored, they began to use the featherboard to play games. They would hit each other with the board, which made it less and less ceremonial. It gradually became a traditional game. What is this? When Ruehue handed over the featherboard with the kabuki pattern on it, the little girl couldn't help but tilt her head, as if she had never seen such a strange thing before. This is called a featherboard. It's a game tool. Didn't you say you haven't played any games? I'll let you play with it today. When the little girl curiously looked at the featherboard that Ruehue treasured since childhood, Ruehue couldn't help but nod. From yesterday's conversation, the little girl seemed to live in a very strict family. Although she knew a lot of knowledge beyond her age and was very mature, she didn't know anything about children's entertainment. It's the kind of family that strictly educates children from a young age but neglects the fun of childhood. Children growing up in such a family are easy to develop psychological problems. Because Ruehue grew up in the Kamiyoshi family, she understood the little girl's feelings very well. This featherboard was given to me by my mother-in-law who worked in my family when I was young. Now I'm giving it to you. You have to cherish it. Looking at the traditional kabuki pattern in the little girl's hand, Rue Hui couldn't help but reach out and pat her little head. Although the little girl didn't say anything, from her expression, Rue Hui knew she was interested in this thing. So Rue Hui took out another feather board and a badminton ball and began to teach her this strange game of using a table tennis racket to play badminton. In short, you just have to hit the ball back. I understand. After Rue Hui finished explaining how to play the featherboard, the little girl nodded. Although it's not easy to hit at first, you'll learn soon. In the quiet lake at night, Rue Hui threw the badminton ball in her hand and gently hit it in the direction of the little girl. Because the opponent was a pure newbie, Rue Hui played the ball very slowly, and deliberately let it float in the air in a parabolic shape for a while. This way, the little girl would not be flustered. But it turned out Rue Hui was thinking too much. The next moment, the little girl's body, like a wild cat hunting in the dark. Holding the feather board in his right hand, he slammed it into the incoming feather ball. Whoosh! Bang! Accompanied by a strong gust of wind, the flying feather ball brushed past the side of Rue Hui's head at an incredible speed, blowing her soft hair into the air. What is this? Am I dreaming? After this round, Rue Hui was still standing there in a daze. She couldn't believe what she just saw. It was hard to imagine that such a delicate little girl could have such exaggerated skills. The badminton ball felt like a professional badminton player smashing. Seeing that Rue Hui couldn't catch the ball and was stunned, the little girl asked in confusion, "How is it? Does this count as my win?" "Yes, so please." The corner of Rue Hui's mouth twitched, but she still picked up a brush dipped in ink and handed it over. This is... The traditional punishment in badminton is that the winner can draw a stroke on the loser's face. Not too much, just one stroke. As if she had accepted her fate, Rue Hui leaned her flawless face over and pointed at her left cheek, indicating that she should draw there. It was the little girl's first time doing something like this. After thinking for a while, she picked up the brush with her slender white hand and drew a V on Rue Hui's left cheek. Okay. Now you're familiar with the game? Let's continue. Although her face was drawn, Rue Hui still smiled and pulled the little girl to continue playing. However, she was still somewhat unsatisfied. Damn it, I don't believe that after playing badminton for so many years, I can't even beat a 6 or 7-year-old girl who is playing for the first time. See if I don't draw all over your face. Looking at the little girl who was about to serve, Rue Hui couldn't help but think. However... Whoosh. Pa. You have some skills. Oh. Again. Again. Oh. Woo woo woo. After more than 10 minutes, Rue Hui's tone changed from leisurely to irritable, and more graffiti appeared on her face. After the 26th stroke, Rue Hui, who was already a cat, couldn't help but support herself with her hands on the ground, as if she was too ashamed to face anyone. Trash. So I'm trash. I can't even beat a 6 or 7-year-old girl. Although she knew that her physical fitness wasn't very good, Rue Hui didn't expect it to be this bad. In other words, she didn't expect the little girl's motor skills to be this strong. Are you okay? Seeing Rue Hui lying on the ground, the little girl who still had a clean face couldn't help but squat in front of her and asked in confusion. Do I look okay to you? Rue Hui said as she raised her head to let the little girl see her miserable state. Now, that originally beautiful face had been drawn from top to bottom, from left to right. Coupled with Rue Hui's extremely bewildered expression, it was really very funny. Ha 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 ha. As if she was amused by the big sister's miserable face, the little girl finally couldn't help but laugh. Ever since Rue Hui met her, this was the first time she saw the little girl's smiling face. She was already very beautiful. Even if her face hadn't grown, she could still charm people, making everyone's eyes unconsciously gather on her. At this moment, after being amused, she smiled sweetly, causing her cute little face to suddenly become a little more lively, becoming a lot more lively. That's right, little kids should smile more. It's not good to keep a straight face. Seeing the little girl finally smile, Rue Hui ignored the messy graffiti on her face and rubbed the little girl's face that still had some baby fat. Okay, let's continue playing. This, we can play. I'll go wash my face first. There's no place to draw anymore. Just like that, as Rue Hui ran to the clear lake to wash her face with a bitter smile, the two continued this interesting graffiti game. After that night, Rue Hui often made plans with the little girl to bring all kinds of toys to play with her. The two played from featherboard to sword jades, flower cards, top, kites, marbles, and so on. In nearly a month's time, they played all kinds of games that Rue Hui knew. As the two spent more time together, Rue Hui also had a deeper understanding of this little girl called Ayam. Although she only asked for a name and didn't know her surname, nor her family background, Rue Hui really liked this smart little girl. During their time together, she even discovered that Yong Ji possessed various talents that were so perfect that they were almost inhuman. This little girl's learning ability, thinking ability, reaction speed, insight, motor nerves, and almost all the indicators of human excellence reached the level of genius. The most terrifying thing was that she wasn't just a genius in one area, but a genius in all areas. This meant that if she wanted, Ayam could easily become a scientist, an athlete, a politician, an artist, and so on when she grew up. She could even become the leader of her profession. Child of God, Ayam was like a child blessed by God. There was nothing that she couldn't do. In this world, as long as she wanted to do something, there was almost nothing that she couldn't do. This child's talent was so terrifying that even Rue Hui couldn't help but feel a little afraid. Such a powerful child, her future path might affect the future of the entire world. She had to guide her well. Whether it was because she hit it off with this child, or because she just finished being the vegetarian king, and wanted to find something for herself to rely on, it was fine. In short, Rue Hui tried to communicate with Ayam step by step, trying to instill good values into her. As the days passed, the relationship between the two got better and better. If someone who didn't know the situation passed by, they might think that this was a beautiful and cute mother and daughter. However, such days didn't last long. Just as Rue Hui and Yongji were playing by the lakeside in the outskirts of Tokyo as usual, a middle-aged man dressed in a black ancient kimono stepped into the night, as if a devil from hell had found them. When the man with a very ancient samurai tsukuyomi and a mustache on the side of his mouth appeared, Ayam, who was playing cards with Rue Hui, couldn't help but scatter the cards in her hand on the ground. Yongji, the servants reported that you've been disappearing a lot at night recently. So you've come here? The man slowly opened his mouth and said with a tone that seemed to despise everything. However, when Rue Hui saw the man's face, her body suddenly trembled violently. Rue Hui knew this man. Of course she knew this man. How could she not know? Because this guy was the current head of the Tianmu clan, that had been enemies with the Kamiyoshi clan for generations. He was also known as the most terrifying Tianmu clan in the past 100 years. Tianmu Yongye. Chapter 316. Rue Hui, as the former house king of the Kanzai clan, naturally knew the history of the clan very well. A few hundred years ago, during the Warring States period, the demon king of the sixth heaven, Oda Nobunaga, was killed by his subordinate, Sensible Mitsuhide, in the famous Hanoji incident. Although Nobunaga died, one of his descendants inherited the demon king's beliefs and legacy under the surname Tenmu, and became the dark side hidden in history. The ancestor of the Kamiyoshi clan was Sensible Mitsuhide, who started the rebellion against Nobunaga. It was said that when Sensible Mitsuhide discovered the existence of the Tenmu clan, he married his daughter, Tamako, into the Shinto clan Kamiyoshi, and began to organize his family's forces to secretly fight against the Tenmu clan. At first, no one expected the two sides to fight for such a long time. From the Warring States period hundreds of years ago, to the Edo period, the Clear period, the Taisho period, the Showa period, the Heisei period, until today, there was still no clear victor. In the protracted battles, the Heavenly Eye race had been secretly improving the bloodline purity of their descendants through race modification, making their descendants more and more inhuman. As a result, they were able to gain an advantage in every battle. In the modern era, which was Rue Hui's generation, the Kamiyoshi clan was suppressed by their old enemies to the point where they couldn't even fight against the Tenmu clan. They could only rely on the Yatsuki clan's secret protection to survive. One of the main culprits that caused the gap between the two sides to widen was the current head of the Tenmu clan, Tenmu Yongye. The last time Rue Hui saw Tenmu Yongye was before she entered the Tenmu shrine as the Tenmu king. Although it had been more than 20 years, that meeting had left a deep impression on Rue Hui. She always felt that she wasn't facing a human, but an alien creature in human skin. That's right, an alien creature in human skin. That was how Rue Hui described Yongye. What's going on? Why is the head of the Tenmu clan here? And he even called out Iam's name. Wait a minute. Evernight. Iam. Could it be? Rue Hui instinctively shielded Iam behind her the moment she saw Yongyi. However, she immediately thought of a hair-raising answer. In order to make their offspring stronger, the Heavenly Eye clan had resorted to the outrageous method of breeding with the most ferocious criminals in every generation. Therefore, they had been improving the human race generation after generation. During this process of race improvement, besides the harsh training that every member of the Heavenly Eye clan had to undergo since they were young, it was said that they would use medicine, acupuncture, hypnosis, and even surgery to maximize the potential of the human body. Thinking about it from this angle, Iam's insanely powerful talent perfectly matched the results of the Heavenly Eye clan's genetic modification. Furthermore, her name was so similar to the current head of the clan, Yongye. All these clues clearly pointed to the same answer. Could it be that Iam was a member of the Heavenly Eye clan? Isn't this the former Zhai king, Dai Rue Hui? What are you planning to do to my cute daughter? Just as Rue Hui was shocked speechless by the sudden news, Yongyi looked at the woman who was shielding his daughter behind her and spoke in a tone that made one's scalp go numb. As the head of the Heavenly Eye clan, Yongye naturally knew Rue Hui. However, he didn't expect the former Zhai king to be with his daughter for no reason. As expected, Iam was this man's daughter. Damn it! After receiving Yongye's confirmation, Rue Hui couldn't help but grit her teeth. However, she immediately grabbed Iam's shoulder and shouted behind her, "Rabbit ball! Ruyu! Chenin! Show yourself!" Yes. Accompanied by a sharp voice that sounded like a sharp blade, several figures flew out from the small forest not far away like lightning, directly blocking in front of Rue Hui and Yongji. These guardian ninjas were the members who were usually responsible for protecting Rue Hui. Rue Hui naturally knew that they were nearby, so she summoned all of them with an order and put on a posture as if they were ready to fight at any time. However, when Yongye saw this, he only smiled and sneered, "Oh, you can't be planning to kidnap my daughter and use her as a hostage, right? Really, this generation of the Kamiyoshi clan has also fallen." Rustle, rustle, rustle. Although his daughter was in the hands of the enemy, Yongye didn't seem to be worried at all. With a wave of his hand, a few other figures in pitch-black tights flashed out from the shadows. Their speed was also as fast as lightning, not inferior to the people in front of them. The Kamiyoshi clan had the guardian ninjas that followed them for generations. The Heavenly Eye clan also had the black feather ninjas that followed them for generations. These two ninjas also came from the most powerful ninja legion in the Warring States period, the Wind Demon Ninjas. It is said that the Wind Demon Ninja village was divided into two after the defeat of Nobunaga. The two leaders followed the Heavenly Eye clan and Kanzaki respectively. They became two ninjas of the same clan but were mortal enemies. They were the Guardian Ninjas and the Black Feather Ninjas. If the situation after the meeting between Rue Hui and Yongye was tense, then the meeting between the Guardian Ninjas and the Black Feather Ninjas was not tense at all. It was a situation where a fight could break out at any time. After all, in the past so many years, the two sides had been constantly killing each other on the front line, and the hatred had long accumulated to the point that the mention of the two words made them gnash their teeth in hatred. They couldn't wait to pull out their weapons and turn the other party into ashes on the spot. But even so, as the leader of the Guardian Ninjas, Rabbit Ball hurriedly said to his master, "Rue Hui-sama, you should leave first. It will be very dangerous here after a fight." "Okay." After nodding, Rue Hui said to Iam, who was in her arms, "Iam, come with me." From the moment Yongye appeared, Iam didn't say anything, and her attitude was very calm. This made Rue Hui not know what this child was thinking. But no matter what, Rue Hui couldn't let Iam continue to stay with the Heavenly Eye clan. After all, she knew that the Heavenly Eye clan had a notorious coming-of-age ceremony. That is, all the children of the clan will be thrown into a building and let them kill each other. The one who comes out alive will be the next head of the clan. Thinking that Iam will be involved in this kind of tragedy in the future, Rue Hui couldn't help but feel numb, so she wanted to take Iam with her at this time. "Go with you. Where to?" After hearing the words of his big sister, Iam showed a somewhat puzzled expression. "To Big Sister's." "Oh." Rue Hui originally wanted to say, "to Big Sister's house," but halfway through, she couldn't help but stop. Obviously, as Iam was a member of the Heavenly Eye clan, the Kamiyoshi clan would not allow Rue Hui to take her in. After all, the current Rue Hui was only the former Zhai Wang, and the position of head of the clan was still in her uncle's hands. Although Rue Hui's words didn't carry much weight, she couldn't change the decision of the entire clan by herself. So if Rue Hui took Iam back just like that, Iam would only end up being caught by the elders of the clan and burned to ashes. Wouldn't that be causing her death for nothing? After sensing Rue Hui's hesitation, Yongye couldn't help but laugh. "Rue Hui Konoshiro, is there something wrong with your head? Don't tell me you've fallen in love with my daughter? Anyway, I can't just watch as your clan tramples on her." "Trample? You must have misunderstood something." Yongye laughed coldly and said, "Her father is me, and her mother is a murderer who committed 23 murders in London. Do you really think that a child like her can integrate into the normal world?" "How would I know if I don't try? I'll use all my means to help her become a normal person, and whether it succeeds or not isn't up to you to decide." "Rabbit ball. Hold them back." Before he even finished speaking, Rue Hui pulled Iam and ran backward, and the Guardian Ninjas, led by Rabbit Ball, immediately started fighting with the Black Feather Ninjas. Hiss! In an instant, the smell of blood filled the air. The battle between ninjas was primitive and cruel. Every second could result in death, and injuries were common. Inhale, inhale, inhale. But just as Rue Hui pulled Iam and ran a few steps, the latter's small nostrils suddenly inhaled a whiff of blood, and then her feet suddenly stopped, revealing an intoxicated expression. "Yong, Iam." After realizing that she couldn't pull Iam away, Rue Hui looked at the young Iam with a surprised expression. "Sorry, big sister. Compared to games like badminton, sword jades, and flower cards, I'm more interested in that." Hearing the sounds of the ninjas killing each other behind her, and smelling the smell of blood, this little girl who was at most 7 years old couldn't help but reveal a strange smile. She was smiling. She was smiling. Yongji was smiling. Even in such a situation, she was smiling so brightly, as if she really enjoyed the scene of blood and flesh flying everywhere. And this cruel smile instantly shattered Rue Hui's heart. Iam's current behavior meant that Rue Hui's guidance over the past month or so was meaningless. The girl was still the same girl, still the young demon who liked to nail butterflies to trees, liked to destroy lives like toys. "Iam, if you go back with him, you can't go back." When Iam broke free from her hand, and walked toward eternal night, Rue Hui couldn't help but shout behind her. Rue Hui rarely spoke so loudly to people, and her words even had a trace of pleading. But even so, Iam still didn't stop. The little girl silently walked towards her father until she disappeared into the darkness along with the figure, leaving Rue Hui alone on the spot, feeling a sense of loss. After that, Rue Hui didn't even know how she returned home. It was obvious that the incident had a huge impact on her. The former Zhai Wang felt like a piece of her heart was dug out, and she always felt that some place was empty, and there was no place to go. After that, Rue Hui first went home and sat in boredom for 3 days, and then went to Europe to find a high-end company that specialized in test tube babies, and spent a lot of money to give birth to a cute daughter. Since she no longer had any sustenance, she would just have to find a new one. With this thought in mind, Rue Hui finally gave birth to a healthy girl 10 months later. Until when she held the newly born colored glaze in her arms, the emptiness in Rue Huey's heart was filled, and she felt that she was alive again. It was hard to imagine that colored glaze's origin was actually related to Iam. It was actually related to the witch who killed her father, Eternal Night, with her own hands, and had long since lost her humanity. For colored glaze, this was undoubtedly a huge insult. Of course, Rue Hui had already decided to take this to the grave, and would never let her cute daughter know. Chapter 317. Although more than a decade had passed, Rue Hui would still feel uneasy whenever she thought of that melancholy night. Just like now. But on this originally quiet night, Rue Hui shouldn't have thought of that incident unless she had some kind of ominous premonition. This feeling, could it be? Forget it, I'm probably thinking too much. However, just as Rue Hui sighed and was about to return to her room to rest, a gust of wind suddenly swept through the darkness not far away. Whoosh! A black light, a sharp black luster appeared from the darkness and flew towards Rue Hui's slender neck as if it was going to cut her throat open. Bang! The next moment, another even smaller white light flashed at the same time and shot down the black light in midair. What? After hearing the collision not far away from her, Rue Hui finally understood why she felt uneasy today. Someone really wanted to deal with her. Before she could react, the sound of a fierce battle suddenly came from the wall not far away. Then two figures fell from more than 10 meters in the air and landed in the middle of the garden not far from Rue Hui. Who are you? After landing, the slightly old figure standing on Rue Hui's side, the leader of the Guardian Ninja Cat House Bunny Ball, couldn't help but frown and looked at the man in black in front of him with a serious gaze. Although the black-clothed man was wearing a mask that covered half of his face, judging from his exposed pupils and skin, this black-clothed man shouldn't be too old. At most, he looked to be in his 30s. But what surprised Bunny Ball wasn't his age, but this man was really too strong. Just when he noticed the first sneak attack on Rue Hui, Bunny Ball threw out a long needle to block the flying sharp weapon while attacking the enemy's hiding place. In just a few seconds, the two had actually exchanged more than 10 blows on the wall and in the air, but the result was a draw. That's right, the result was a draw. In other words, this young man actually had strength that wasn't inferior to Bunny Ball. This was a bit too shocking. Is it the Black Feather Ninja from the Heavenly Eye group? But I don't remember there being such a strong person in the Black Feather group, and he looks very young. Also, how did he sneak in here? Komashiro Imperial Garden has the tightest security around it, even I can't sneak in without alerting anyone. Where did this guy come from? Rabbit Ball's slightly turbid eyes stared fixedly at his opponent. At the same time, many figures darted out from the surroundings like lightning, surrounding the black-clothed man in a pincer attack. Surrounded by the leader of the Guardian Ninja and several elite ninjas, if it was an ordinary person, they would have already panicked and prepared to escape in a hurry. But the man in black was different. He just looked at Bunny Ball coldly, the corner of his mouth hidden in the mask raised slightly, revealing a disdainful smile. Are you thinking who I am? It turns out that there are things that even the famous cat house spreading rabbit balls doesn't know about. In front of so many people, the man said with his abnormally hoarse voice that seemed to have been ruined by something. When he mentioned the words, Cat House Bunny Ball, his tone faintly became heavier. This made Rue Hui see that there must be some kind of personal grudge between him and Bunny Ball. If there was a grudge with Bunny Ball, then it was most likely the Black Feather Ninja from the Heavenly Eye group. After all, Bunny Ball had killed countless Black Feather Ninja in his life, so the grudge was as deep as the sea. But even the current head of the intelligence department of the Heavenly Eye Group and Black Feather Ninja leader, Zhonghua, was a bit weaker than Bunny Ball in terms of strength. It was impossible for him to make Bunny Ball show such a serious expression. But even if he couldn't figure out the person's identity, Bunny Ball still said faintly, "The technique you just used is the Black Feather Ninja secret technique. Your identity is obvious, there's no need to think." Ever since the strongest Wind Demon Ninja was split into two, each side took a part of the secret technique, so the Black Feather Ninja and Guardian Ninja's techniques were very different and could be recognized at a glance. Oh, is that so? Then you better watch carefully. But the man sneered again, his body flashed, and in the blink of an eye, he was in front of Bunny Ball. Rabbit Ball wasn't surprised that this guy had super god speed that wasn't inferior to his own, because he had already seen his strength. But what made Bunny Ball's eyes widen was the man's hand movements. The black-clothed man's right hand lashed out like a whip as he sprinted forward. His 3 fingers, index, middle and nameless, were like the tip of a whip as he attacked the enemy in a half-stabbing, half-waving manner. In that instant, the air along the way seemed to be cut in half. The excessively fast arm movement caused the tip of the fingers to reach supersonic speed. Using this speed to stab out the 3 fingers, the power was enough to pierce 3 holes in steel. Such a powerful move, Bunny Ball was very familiar with it, because this was the Guardian Ninja's technique that he had used for most of his life, sacrificial blade. Putting the 3 fingers together in a shape, using a whip-like technique to swing out the arm, the tip of the fingers would reach supersonic speed, causing an almost unblockable penetrative damage. In the past many years, Bunny Ball had used secret technique, sacrificial blade, to kill who knows how many opponents. But this was the first time he personally experienced the power of this move. How was this possible? How could a black feather ninja use the Guardian Ninja's technique? In the blink of an eye, although Bunny Ball was astonished, he still swung his arm and used a standard blade sacrifice that could be used as a textbook move to stab in that direction. Sacrificial blade against sacrificial blade. The 6 fingers collided in the air, but it gave off a strong wind-breaking sound like 2 whips colliding. Pa! The violent explosion spread like a shockwave to Rue Hui, who was dozens of meters away, making her unconsciously take half a step back. After the commotion, Bunny Ball and the black-clothed man respectively retreated. But the difference between the two was that the black-clothed man only took 3 steps back, while Bunny Ball took 5 steps back. How? How was this possible? He actually used the Guardian Ninja's technique that was passed down from generation to generation? And he could even force the leader to retreat? When they saw the scene just now, the surrounding Guardian Ninjas couldn't help but widen their eyes, showing an expression of disbelief. All ninjas know that secret technique is definitely not something that can be learned simply by imitation. It not only takes a long time to practice, but also requires some special auxiliary methods to practice. And these auxiliary methods to practice secret technique are absolute secrets. Only Bunny Ball and a few high-level ninjas can master it. So, secret technique is basically impossible to fall into the hands of the enemy. Who are you? After taking a few steps back, Bunny Ball couldn't help but take a deep breath and asked for the second time. For some reason, Bunny Ball always felt that this black-clothed man gave him a familiar feeling, as if he had seen this guy before. Humph. It's not strange that you don't know. After all, in your impression, I'm probably a dead man. Suddenly, the black-clothed man slightly smiled and finally reached out to take off the mask that covered half of his face. Under the mask, it was a man who looked at most 30 years old, with a handsome face, but the corner of his mouth raised with a strong evil aura. In terms of appearance alone, there was nothing special about this man's appearance. At most, he looked like an evil ninja who had just walked out of a brothel. This is... But when he saw that familiar face, Bunny Ball's eyes widened. Because he did know this man, and he really thought that this man was already dead, and this man's name was... Mirage. You're actually still alive. In an instant, Bunny Ball finally shouted out this name, shouted out the name that he gave him, Cat House Mirage. Indeed, the name Mirage was given by Bunny Ball, because he was Bunny Ball's grandson. He was Bunny Ball's true blood relative. Mirage? Cat House Mirage? It can't be. Wasn't he already dead? When Rue Hui heard this name, she frowned slightly as well. According to what Rue Hui knew, Bunkamaru originally had relatives, but his daughter and son-in-law had already died in the battle with the Black Feather Ninja, and the only grandson left behind was a freak with an abnormal brain. That's right, Bunny Ball's grandson Cat House Mirage was a freak, or it could be said that he was too ambitious. As early as 10 years ago, the very young Mirage had already begun to gather his own forces in the shinobi, and he also planned to assassinate all the members of the Kamiyoshi clan, seize the foundation of the Kamiyoshi clan, and restore the prestige of the Wind Demon Shinobi. But because of the protection of the elite ninjas including Bunnyball, such a madman naturally couldn't succeed. In the end, Mirage was chased all the way to the edge of the cliff by Bunnyball, and he fell off the cliff, leaving only a bloody corpse. So according to reason, Mirage should have died long ago. Then why did he appear more than 10 years later today? Could it be that the corpse that I found that year was fake? This kid actually faked his death? Thinking of this, Bunnyball slightly gritted his teeth. Obviously, he already knew what kind of trick he fell into that year. Did you know? But it's already too late. Seeing his grandfather gritting his teeth, Mirage sneered, I have been working for Sama for the past 10 years, during which I have mastered all the skills of the Black Feather and Kanzaki ninjas. In other words, I am now the strongest ninja in the world. Chapter 318. Good. So that's how it is. After listening to Juan and Anne's explanation, everyone understood why he was so strong. Originally, Black Feather and Guardian Deity were ninjas that split from Wind Demon Ninja. Both sides have mastered half of Wind Demon Ninja. However, Huanan had been practicing the inner technique of the Guardian Ninja ever since she was a child. Later on, she joined Yongji and practiced the inner technique of the Black Feather Ninja, becoming a monster who was good at two things. From this point of view, Jinan is indeed worthy of being the strongest ninja of the current generation, because he is the only one who truly mastered all the techniques of the ancestors of the Wind Demon Shinobi. Humph. So what? But when everyone was shocked by Juan and Anne's situation, Bunkamaru coldly snorted and said, It's not that the more skills you have, the stronger you are. In the end, it's still strength that speaks. Yes, I like your way of saying it, so let's fight. After saying that, Shehuan took a deep breath. His body trembled slightly, and an excited expression appeared on his handsome face. The reason why he trembled wasn't because he was afraid, but because he was too excited. For Huanan, this scene was without a doubt his lifelong wish. 10 years, 10 years, do you know how I spent these 10 years? Ever since his plan to assassinate Kandai Ruehue failed, and he was chased by his grandfather, Huanan almost every day thought about the scene where he fought with his grandfather again. Resentment, strong resentment supported this man, and in these 10 years, he trained like a madman, regardless of the cost. As long as he could kill Bunkamaru, as long as he could destroy the Kamiyoshi clan, he would do anything. After 10 years, this man was like a poisonous blade that was soaked in poisonous water for 10 years. The blade reappeared, and the pitch-black blade almost merged with the darkness, enough to cut any light into dust. Protect Ruehue, Sama. You still have time to care about others. Before the battle, Bunkamaru hurriedly shouted to the ninjas next to him, but Huanan couldn't help but laugh. Guardian God's inner technique. Wind Demon Step. Without waiting for the surrounding ninjas to reach Ruehui, they saw the figure of Huan and suddenly disappeared from where she stood. When he reappeared, countless streaks of jet-black cold light had already scattered around Rabbit Ball's body like stars. Black Feather Inner Technique. Skeletal Hand. Huan and Anne's hands like a storm. The fierce attack suddenly forced Bunkamaru back, and he couldn't fight back. But even so, Bunkamaru was still the strongest among the Guardian God's ninjas. While his body slid back rapidly, 6 long needles shot out from his hands like a celestial maiden scattering flowers, piercing towards 6 vital points in front of Huan An's body. The long needle, condensed with the powerful Dan force, has the power to pierce a hole in steel. Even the Huan An can't do it. Huh? Under Rabbit Ball's astonished gaze, Huan An completely ignored his attack and continued to move forward, allowing the 6 needles to pierce into his chest, abdomen, and other vital acupoints. Bang! In the next second, Bunkamaru's figure flew up like a tree trunk hit by a car. When he landed, there was a deep wound on the left side of the old man's abdomen. Of course, if Bunkamaru didn't try to dodge, his internal organs might have been dug out. Huan An's current lethality was so amazing. Huanan, who was stabbed by the needles, was unscathed, as if Bunkamaru's needles couldn't break through his body's defense. How is this possible? My needles actually... What era is it now, still playing this kind of outdated trick? I am really ashamed of you." In front of Rabbit Ball, Juan and casually pulled out the long needle that was stuck in her body. Then, with a pinch of her palm, she crushed it into powder. "Clothes? Is this guy's clothes strange?" At this time, Bunkamaru looked carefully and found that the black tights Juan was wearing didn't even have a hole, which means that the clothes have the ability to block the needles. "Did you find it?" This is Heavenly Eye Group, Weapon Department, spent a lot of money to create a special protective battlesuit. It is so tough that even bullets can't penetrate it, and it can dissipate most of the impact. Noticing Bunkamaru's gaze on his battlesuit, Juan showed a look of disdain. With this special battlesuit, Bunkamaru's needles were useless. There was no way to pierce through Juan's acupoints. On the contrary, Juan could use Bunkamaru as a target to beat him up. As long as he hit him, he would be heavily injured. The attack and defense of both sides were not on the same level. Even in terms of skills, Juan, who had mastered all the skills of the Wind Demon Ninja, was stronger than Rabbitoshi, and not just by a little. In this situation, there was no suspense in the battle. It was just a one-sided trampling. Juan let out a crazy laugh while using all kinds of techniques to attack Bunkamaru. Bunkamaru could only dodge and run for his life. Too strong. Too strong. Is there really someone in this world who can compete with him? When the few guardian ninjas who stayed here saw their leader being suppressed, they couldn't help but feel a chill in their heart. They even looked at Juan with a trace of fear in their eyes. Originally, the Black Feather Ninja was good at a variety of killing techniques, that is, heavy damage and light body techniques. On the other hand, the inner skills that the Guardian Ninja was good at were mainly various body movement techniques, which were light and heavy body movement techniques. Both sides have their own strengths and weaknesses, so in the past hundreds of years, they have been fighting without winning or losing, and it is difficult to completely destroy each other. But now, this man called Cathouse Sherhuan had completely broken the stalemate. Right now, Juan had combined the heavy damage of Black Feather and the lightning-fast body movement of Guardian. Together with the high-tech protective battlesuit made by the weapons division of the Heavenly Eye clan, she had truly reached a level where her attack, defense, speed, and technique were flawless. How can he fight? How can he fight with such a monster? Thinking of this, those ninjas clenched their fists slightly, as if they were extremely desperate for the current situation. If it was in the past, to deal with this kind of monster, they could only use their lives to kill him. Groups of ninjas took turns to attack him, constantly consuming his stamina, and when he was tired, he could kill him. But Juan wasn't a fool. If he was really besieged by groups of ninjas, he would definitely turn around and run away, and if he wanted to escape, no one would be able to stop him. Therefore, it was very difficult to deal with Juan with the power of Guardian Ninja alone. But even so, it doesn't mean that no one in this world can defeat him. After all, Rue Hui had already picked up her phone when she left and called a man who could be of great help at this time. Beep beep beep. Beep beep beep. At the same time, in the dim room of the Rulong Group headquarters, a familiar ringtone sounded. When she heard the ringtone, the woman who was lying in the man's embrace on a messy bed that seemed to have gone through a battle frowned and pinched the man's waist. "Hurry up and answer the phone, it's so noisy." In the dark, Colored Glaze's voice sounded a bit hoarse. It was hard to imagine that she must have shouted herself hoarse just now. As for the reason, it was needless to say. Yes, yes, yes. After being pinched, Ryuto, who was lying on the bed and feeling the warmth of the body beside him, reluctantly got up. As a result, when he picked up the phone, he found that it was a call from Rue Hui. This was somewhat awkward. "No way. I just ate Colored Glaze. And Mrs. Rue Hui called? Does she have Heaven's Eye?" Looking at the name displayed on the phone, and then looking at Colored Glaze who was lying on the bed in a daze like a puddle of mud, Ryuto swallowed a mouthful of saliva, then he opened the call with trepidation. Originally, Ryuto thought that Rue Hui called to ask about Colored Glaze, so he quickly said, "That, Mrs. Rue Hui? Lioli is working here. I'll send her over in a while. Hurry up. Heavens, I sent a very powerful assassin. Rabbit Ball is no match for him." What? After hearing Rue Hui's urgent words, Ryuto suddenly widened his eyes, then he jumped up from the bed. Such a big movement suddenly woke up Colored Glaze, so she shouted in an unhappy tone, "Annoying! Can't you let me sleep?" Huh? Hearing her daughter's voice from the phone, and those words seemed to have some other meaning, Rue Hui on the other end of the phone suddenly made a "ha" sound. So Rue Hui quickly asked, "Ryuto?" "Colored Glaze, that. Mrs. Rue Hui. I'll be there soon. You guys hang in there. This is troublesome." After knowing that Colored Glaze's voice was heard over there, Ryuto could only awkwardly hang up the phone, quickly put on his clothes and rushed outside. "Ryuto? Dragon? Forget it." When the phone was suddenly hung up, Rue Hui couldn't help but shake her head, but she probably already knew the situation over there. He had already told him not to lay his hands on Lioli before they got married, but in the end, he still turned a deaf ear to it. For some reason, when she thought that Ryuto and Colored Glaze might be lying on the bed just now, Rue Hui's heart actually had a sour feeling. Speaking of which, the one in the dragon battle is so strong, can Lioli take it? Pui. What am I thinking about? As if thinking of her previous experience, Rue Hui's face couldn't help but blush at this time. But she also knew that now was not the time to think about those things, so she quickly walked to the emergency safe house under the escort of the ninjas around her. Chapter 319. Just when Rue Hui was about to call for reinforcements, she unexpectedly heard her daughter's strange voice. The battle in the garden not far away was like a prairie fire that was burning fiercely. He, ha 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 ha. What's wrong? Do you only know how to hide? This is the style of the leader of the Guardian Ninja. In the Kamishiro Imperial Garden, under the cover of night, the arrogant voice of the cat-house Jinan kept echoing, as if he was mocking the blood relative who almost killed him in the past. His every movement was lightning fast, and his attacks were so many that it was dazzling. It was as if there was a storm of blood in the garden. They couldn't intervene. Although the garden had attracted many guards and other guardian ninjas, all of them could only watch from afar. They couldn't intervene in a battle of this level. After all, Jinan's speed was so fast that even guns couldn't be aimed at him, and if they fired randomly, they might hit Rabbit Ball. But even if they wanted to shoot both of them together, Jinan's body was wearing a high-tech combat suit. Even if bullets hit it, it would be difficult to penetrate it. At that time, Rabbit Ball would die in vain. Bang! After a long time, accompanied by a crisp sound, the long needle in Rabbit Ball's hand broke again. Looking carefully, the ground of the battlefield had long been densely covered with broken long needles. It was obvious that this kind of weapon was almost useless against the illusory nunnery. It was as fragile as a toothpick. Huff, huff, huff. After this battle, Rabbit Ball, who finally managed to open up a distance, squatted on the ground and gasped for breath. The number of wounds on his body was frightening. Usually, Rabbit Ball always gave people the feeling of an elegant old gentleman. But now, this old gentleman was covered in blood, his clothes were torn everywhere, his hair was messy, and his glasses were long gone. Compared to Rabbit Ball, Jinan's face wasn't red and he wasn't panting, as if nothing had happened. Even his clothes weren't dirty. Just from this appearance alone, it could be seen how huge the difference in strength between the two sides was. Compared to Huan En, who was 40 years younger and had the advantage in terms of stamina, strength, speed, skills, equipment, and other aspects, Huan En was now 70 years old. Rabbit Ball, whose body had long been weakened, was simply no match for Huan En. "You're too old, old man. But even at your peak, you're still no match for me." Huan En couldn't help but sigh when she saw Tu Wan gasping for air. She then said in a disdainful tone, although Huan En had been thinking of defeating Tu Wan every day and night for the past 10 years, he still felt an inexplicable sense of melancholy when he saw the old man gasping for breath under his attacks. In Huan En's impression, Rabimaru was a perfect ninja. His speed was as fast as lightning, and he could kill any opponent with a single strike. His mastery of various skills had already reached the point of perfection. 10 years ago, the illusory temple was so weak and powerless in front of Rabbit Ball. The figure in his eyes was so tall and mighty. But 10 years later, just 10 years later, the situation between the two sides was completely reversed. Today, in Huan An's eyes, Rabimaru was so weak and powerless. He was just an old man who was about to set foot on the road to hell. Is he too weak? No, I'm too strong. Thinking of this, Huan An couldn't help but look up at the bright moon, raised his chin high, and put on a posture of invincibility is so lonely. Not to mention how pretentious his posture was, how disgusting it was, but this guy's strength was not a joke. It seemed that he was really qualified to act like this. Damn it. Has my body already weakened to such an extent? For Rabbit Ball, watching this grandson showing off in front of him, his mood was naturally quite indignant. At this moment, a guardian ninja next to him shouted, "Leader, let's go together. Kill this kid." Yes. No matter how strong he is, he's just one person. We can't let him leave alive. Bodyguard team, get ready to fire at any time. You can shoot anywhere, as long as you hit him. For a time, a storm surged around the garden. Whether it was the guardian ninja or the professional bodyguards, they all aimed their weapons at Huan An, waiting for Rabbit Ball's order to join the battle. Who knew? Huan An sneered, pointed up, and laughed. Old man, you don't think only you have helpers, right? I also have helpers, and they are stronger than yours. Hula, 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 hula. Before he could finish his sentence, 3 Apache armed helicopters appeared several hundred meters above the Komashiro Imperial Garden with a strong gust of wind. The single-barreled chain cannon and ground-to-ground missiles under the nose of the helicopters also faintly appeared in the airframe, as if they were ready to fire at any time. Armed helicopters? Using this thing in Yoto City? Looking at the 3 armed helicopters floating above their heads, everyone couldn't help but be shocked, and a chill rose from their backs and quickly spread to their whole body. Although the Komashiro Imperial Garden also had an anti-missile system for bombing, even so, it was impossible to completely stop this level of air attack. Therefore, as long as the other side attacked, at least half of the ninjas and bodyguards in the garden below will be killed. Enough. At this time, Bunkamaru shook his head and said, Huan An, you just want to fight me one-on-one, there is no need to do so much. As long as you don't let this group of minions interfere, then I naturally won't let the guys above ruin your mood. This is very reasonable, isn't it? Speaking of this, the corner of Huan An's mouth slightly raised. Obviously, the purpose of Huan An coming this time was to kill Bunkamaru, or kill Rue Hui. At least before Bunkamaru died, he will adhere to the principle of one-on-one combat, and not continue to expand the fire of war, but if other ninjas and Imperial Garden bodyguards want to fight, then the situation will be difficult to say. Bunkamaru naturally understood his meaning, so he said to the people around, You don't need to do anything, I will deal with him. But leader, deal with me? Ha 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 ha. Huan An heard this and laughed. What are you going to do with me? With your superb dodging skill just now? Unfortunately, running away can't get rid of people. Hearing Huan An's ridicule, Bunkamaru didn't answer, but took out the last 6 long needles from his waist. Bunkamaru usually carried 72 long needles all over his body, and 66 of them were destroyed. This was the last weapon left. But this time, he didn't throw the long needles at Huan An, but held 3 in each hand. Without hesitation, he pierced the needles into his head. What? Seeing Bunkamaru's strange action, the smile on Huan An's face suddenly disappeared. This old man pierced Bai Hui, Shangxing, Chengguang, Benshan, Taiyang, Fengqi, and stabbing so hard. Isn't this suicide? Although Huan An wasn't as proficient in acupuncture like Bunkamaru, he was still a person who practiced Qi, so he naturally understood the situation of the human body. Generally speaking, there are many vital points in the head, and acupuncture on the head is only used to stimulate the head slightly, so as not to poke too hard. But now, Bunkamaru directly pierced half of the long needles. It doesn't look like acupuncture, it looks like suicide. But is Bunkamaru committing suicide? Yes and no. At this moment, Bunkamaru was using a suicidal acupuncture technique called Final Technique, Dead Meridian. After the acupuncture, it can release the human body's potential to the maximum, to the point of breaking through the limit. Who? Hoo! Roar! The moment after the acupuncture, Bunkamuru's thin body suddenly swelled up. The hardened muscle fibers tore his clothes apart, the veins on his neck and cheeks popped out, and his eyes were bloodshot. Ferocious aura, a violent ferocious aura came from Bunkamuru's body, and his gaze towards Huan and became as terrifying as a beast looking at its prey. Sensing something amiss, Huan and sneered, "What kind of trick is this? You don't think—" But before he finished speaking, Bunkamuru had already made his move. Bunkamuru's usual attacks were as fast as lightning, but he was also very calm, like a gentleman from the darkness. But when he suddenly took a step forward, the ground exploded with a bang. Countless rocks shot towards Huan, and like bullets. Meanwhile, the violent figure also charged in that direction. Bunkamuru seemed to only need one step to cross the distance of 10 meters, and a storm of attacks had already enveloped Huan An. Inner technique, sacrificial blade dance. Under Huan An's shocked gaze, Bunkamuru's arms flashed like a peacock spreading its tail, as if a dozen people were using the sacrificial blade at the same time, bringing with it the momentum of smashing the enemy into pieces. But Huan An did not show any weakness. His hands also danced, and his hands turned into sharp blades, quickly waving out. In an instant, a series of dense and shocking sounds of wind breaking and explosions came from between the two of them, causing the surrounding audience to tremble in fear. But after this situation lasted for a second, Huan An's right leg could not help but take a step back. That's right, Huan An retreated. He actually retreated because he could not block Bunkamuru's attack. Of course, this was not something strange, because only Huan An knew how terrifying Bunkamuru's attacks were. So fast and so heavy. Logically speaking, Huan An should be much stronger than Bunkamuru in terms of physical strength, but now that both sides were using the sacrificial blade to fight, he could clearly feel a huge force as heavy as Mount Tai, and he was being pushed back step by step. This was the current Bunkamuru. This was Bunkamuru after using the final technique, Death Meridian. When he used this special acupuncture technique, he would release all the potential in his body. At the same time, Rabbit Ball's life would also rapidly wither away because he could not withstand this power. This was a move that would truly cause both of them to perish together. Chapter 320. Right now, Rabbit Ball was like a firework that was burning itself. It could only burn for a short period of time, but it couldn't last for too long. Of course, when he used the final skill, Death Meridian, Rabbit Ball was already prepared to die. He only wanted to make up for the mistakes he made in the past. His body quickly turned, like a ghost in the night, and in the blink of an eye, he was already beside Huan An, and a sacrificial blade silently stabbed the neck of Huan An. With Rabbit Ball's current strength, even through the combat suit, he could poke a bloody hole, so Huan An naturally didn't dare to be careless. So Huan An quickly stretched out his hand, and with a clever posture, he caught the stab from the bottom, and after catching it, he punched Rabbit Ball's heart. Rabbit Ball didn't want to take the punch, but his figure flashed and once again appeared behind Huan An. At the same time, he used the sacrificial blade to stab the back of Huan An's head. This move was simply impossible to guard against. His figure flickered and his shadow merged into one on the ground. Finally, when Huan An dodged the stab, he took the opportunity to kick him in the shin. Ka! At the same time, Huan An felt his leg go numb, and his leg was almost broken by Rabbit Ball's kick, and his body also staggered forward, showing the power of this kick. Taking advantage of the opponent's unstable body, Rabbit Ball's two hands swept out like a gust of wind, and the sacrificial blade almost fell on Huan An's body without any pattern, as if he wanted to turn him into a meat paste. Such a violent fighting style made the surrounding Guardian ninjas stunned. Previously, Rabbit Ball's battle gave people a pleasing feeling, but now, it was like a violent storm, raging waves. Sharp blades swept out with a strong wind-breaking sound, and the wind and thunder were strong. In an instant, Huan An's body was covered with injuries. Obviously, even the combat suit that could block bullets couldn't block Rabbit Ball's hands. If Huan An had the upper hand in the previous battle, and Rabbit Ball was injured all over his body, then the situation was quickly reversed. With the blessing of the final skill, Death Meridian, Rabbit Ball has now recovered to the peak of his life, which is the time when he was invincible in the world, around 30 years old. He, ha 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 ha. Delightful, delightful. I didn't expect this old man to be able to recover to the peak of his life at the age of 70, and even kill that bastard grandson of mine. God is really good to me. Incessantly launching attacks at the Mirage Temple, causing it to be riddled with wounds. Although Tu Wan felt as though his body was creaking like a speeding old car, he still had a cheerful smile on his face. Of course, happy, too happy. Everyone who went against the Kanzai family had to die. This sentence was instilled into Bunny Ball by his father when he was very young. It was almost like brainwashing. Bunny Ball had almost forgotten his father's appearance and figure. After all, it had been 50 to 60 years since his father had perished together with the previous leader of the Black Feather Ninjas. Rabbit Ball, Rabbit Ball, Rabbit Ball of the past, Rabbit Ball the guardian ninjas of the ninjas of the Kamiyoshi. Regardless of whether the family has been prosperous or unstable for hundreds of years, this group of ninjas have never forgotten their duties and have always been by his side. This level of service is far beyond the level of loyalty to the master, it is close to the level of faith. That's right, in Rabbit Ball's heart, the Kamiyoshi clan is his faith. Whether it is Lady Rue Hui or Lady Colored Glaze, as long as someone wants to harm them, even if it is the King of Heaven, they must die. But while Rabbit Ball was fighting with all his might, Huanan on the other side was miserable. Never in his wildest dreams would he have thought that Tu Wan would actually have a hidden skill that could allow his strength to rise to such a level. This old man in his 70s used his hand as a blade. Every move he made was like an antelope hanging its horn. There was not the slightest trace of damage. Often, before Huanan could react, he felt a burning pain in his body. This kind of skill that replaced the blade with bare hands and super-fast speed can be described as a ninja's profession characteristics incisively and vividly. Unknowingly, Huanan had dodged hundreds of steps in a row. At this time, he could only constantly move his body, he didn't even have time to take a breath, his heart was already suffering. I can't stop, if I don't keep moving, there is a high probability that I will be seriously injured by Rabbit Ball's blade, or even die on the spot. Damn it. This old man is crazy, I can't die here. Huanan knew that if this continues, it is only a matter of time before he is defeated, so he couldn't help but think of a way. From the beginning, Huanan was aiming to kill Rabbit Ball. In fact, when he forced out the final technique, Death Meridian, this goal was already achieved. A wise man knows better than to fight when the odds are against him. Let those guys directly bombard the Kamiyo Imperial Garden, I can also take the opportunity to escape. Thinking of this, Huanan also steeled his heart. While dodging and gasping for breath, he took the opportunity to make a special hand gesture to the 3 Apache helicopters floating a few hundred meters above. Although it was night, and Huanan's hand gesture wasn't particularly obvious, but he believed that the carefully trained, spread the martial arts mercenary group could see it clearly. After all, the Fighting Under the Heavens mercenary group was a mercenary group directly under Yong Ji. Every mercenary in the group was an elite that had fought their way out of the battlefield. Moreover, they had long been using binoculars to closely observe the situation here. Sure enough, when Huanan made the hand gesture, the helicopters that were floating in the air quickly turned around and began to fly over here. They are going to make a move. Seeing that the 3 helicopters were preparing to fly at a low altitude, and that the single-barreled chain cannons were about to open fire on the Kanzaki ninjas and the Imperial Garden's bodyguards, even the experienced ninjas couldn't help but feel a pang of panic. This was an armed helicopter, a genuine weapon of mass destruction on the battlefield. Although the Kamiyoshi ninjas also have weapons, these pistols, submachine guns, and other light weapons are no threat to the helicopters, they can only passively take a beating. Huanan, you spread out. Everyone spread out. Seeing that Huan and this bastard actually ignored the previous agreement and summoned the helicopters to break into the battlefield, Bunkomaru angrily attacked him while shouting at his companions. But even so, it was all too late. The single-barrel chain cannon below the helicopters began to spin and preheat, and at any time, it could spray out deadly sparks. However, the real magic wasn't this. But in the next moment, a rocket flew from the sky not far away like a meteor. Whoosh! Boom! Before the closest helicopter could open fire, the rocket already drew a beautiful parabola in the night sky hundreds of meters away and landed on top of the helicopter, and made a series of loud explosions. What the hell? In the next second, under the dumbfounded gazes of the people below, the helicopter that was flying at a low altitude like an eagle destroying its prey suddenly turned into a huge fireball, falling down shakily like a bird that had been shot down by a stone. Bang! With a loud crash, the helicopter crashed to the ground, and the pilot and the rest of the crew ended their lives with the great feat of smashing through a wall. Rocket launcher? Who is it? Huan and Anne's eyes almost popped out of their sockets when she saw the helicopter that Lady Yongji had sent to support her crash in the blink of an eye. She hurriedly looked in the direction where the rocket came from. It would have been better if Huan and did not look up. At the same time, the other two rockets drew a beautiful arc in front and behind, respectively hitting the other two armed helicopters. How is this possible? Am I dreaming? When the last two helicopters turned into fireballs and fell to the ground, Huan couldn't believe his eyes. The three rockets that flew from hundreds of meters away accurately hit the helicopter's propellers and shot it down from the sky. This kind of thing is extremely difficult to happen. After all, rocket launchers were not meant to be used to deal with aerial units. The accuracy of the rocket launchers could only be described as worrying. Even in civilian battlefields, they had to rely on multiple rocket launchers to shoot down low-flying helicopters in unison to barely be able to take them down. However, the guy who fired the rockets from afar completely ignored this convention. Instead, he directly fired 3 rockets, and one of them hit an armed helicopter. Everyone had a share, and no one missed. What was even more frightening was that each of these rockets had predicted the distance of several hundred meters in advance and the arc of the parabola, and they had accurately hit the propeller that was guaranteed to be fatal. This kind of firing accuracy was simply amazing. Who the hell is it? I don't care. I just need to leave this place first. When the surroundings of the Mirage Nunnery were illuminated by the raging flames of the 3 helicopters, Rabbit Ball, who was not far away, was clutching his chest due to the final skill, Death Meridian, revealing a painful expression. But just as Huan was about to run away, a hand patted him on the shoulder like a ghost. Hey! Don't go so fast, you haven't played with me yet. What? Before Huan could react, his right hand was firmly locked by a big hand like an iron clamp, and at the same time, a sharp pain accompanied by the crisp sound of bones cracking came from the first joint. In just half a second, when Huan turned his head, one of his fingers had already been twisted and broken by someone in an executioner's action. And the person who approached the strongest ninja in history like a ghost, and broke his fingers while laughing, showed a malicious smile under the light of the fire. Chapter 321. This guy is Ryuto Kiryu. As the new head of the secret department of the Heavenly Eye Group, Huan also successfully promoted the previous head to the position of deputy head not long ago, so he naturally knows the enemies of the group. Now in the Heavenly Eye Group, as long as the enemy of the group is mentioned, it is impossible to avoid this supreme emperor. According to the rumors, although Ryuto Kiryu has a human face, he should be some kind of non-human creature, and there are countless legends related to him. Is it that exaggerated? He is just a 17 or 18 years old kid. Whenever he heard the legend about Ryuto, Huan couldn't help but show a disdainful expression, and secretly said in his heart that he must personally take off that guy's head in the future. However, now that Ryuto has circled behind him like a ghost, and even grabbed his hand and broke his knuckles, Huan knew that the legend was not exaggerated at all. Or rather, those legends did not reflect the horror of this man at all. How is it possible? How did he get behind me? For Huan, it is an extremely inconceivable thing for Ryuto to get behind him silently. He is a ninja, an expert at the back, an expert at sensing aura. How can he be easily circled to the back by others? As long as there is a trace of aura, Huan can definitely find someone behind him. But Ryuto didn't even reveal a trace of aura. Of course, if Ryuto knew Huan's doubts, he would definitely laugh out loud. Nonsense, I have full proficiency in the aura shielding technique, and silent movement technique. As long as I don't want to be discovered, I can dance in front of your bed in the middle of the night and you won't find out. But now Juan didn't have time to think about how Ryuto got behind him. His attention was focused on his right hand that was caught. Gotcha! Accompanied by the crisp sound of bones cracking, before Juan could react, his thumb had already been twisted into the shape of a fried dough twist. This bastard! Huh! After reacting, Juan quickly rotated his body in the air, trying to use the force of the rotation to get rid of Ryuto's grasp and open the distance. Who would have thought that the moment his body leaped up and spun, the huge force transmitted from that hand directly fixed his muscular and slender body in place, causing him to forcefully stop halfway through his spin. Is there a mistake? Using the power of one hand to block the power of my whole body? Gotcha! At the same time that the escape plan failed, Juan's second finger was also lightly broken, and another heart-wrenching pain was transmitted over. There are 3 fingers, you have 3 chances. If you can't break free before all your fingers are broken, I will twist your head. Long Do looked at the surprised assassin and spoke as if he was talking to trash. Monster, this guy is a monster. Inner technique. The next second, Juan's other arm slammed toward this side like a whip. His 3 fingers, which were in a triangular formation, pierced towards Long Do's face like the sharp tip of a whip. Juan's sacrificial blade was not slow, and it was almost to the point where human dynamic vision could barely cope with it. But even so, Ryuto still saw it very clearly, because his dynamic vision at this time had reached the limit of human vision. LV5 Insight. When Ryuto learned that a powerful assassin had come to the Kamishiro Imperial Garden, he had already spent 5 billion renminbi to raise his insight to the maximum level on the way here. Previously, when Tomahawk was raided in Moscow, the Black Hand Alliance had seized a large amount of loot, including a large amount of cash and gold. After exchanging the loot for cash, Long Do had a few billion yuan in his account. He was filthy rich. At this time, with a superhuman level of LV5 insight, no matter how fast Juan's movements were, it was at best in Ryuto's eyes. Whoosh! As a result, the moment that whip-like hand pierced out, Long Do grabbed Juan's right hand and threw his body into the sky. With this throw, Juan only felt that his whole body lost balance, and flew in the sky like a kite. The sacrificial blade, that was originally aimed at the opponent's face, had already missed. Crack! The moment he landed, another finger was quickly broken, and there were only 2 left. In other words, if Juan couldn't get rid of Ryuto's grasp in the next 2 operations, then he was dead. This was not a battle at all, but an execution. Ryuto knew this, and Juan also knew this. The former enjoyed it, while the latter was in extreme pain. This pain was not only from the physical pain, but the most terrible was the mental torture. Why did I, the head of the Tenmu group, the strongest ninja of the era, fall to the point of being executed in public by a 17 or 18-year-old brat? Damn it! There was no other way. Seeing that he still had 2 chances, and the opponent was about to kill him, Juan had to make an extremely painful decision. Under the illumination of the surrounding flames, the strongest ninja suddenly flew up, and the sharp blade on his ninja boots popped out and stabbed towards Ryuto's temple. But no matter what, this kind of attack was a bit too casual. So Ryuto leaned sideways to avoid the kick, and after breaking the 4th finger, he sneered and said, "Fourth, one last time, you, huh?" Bang! Before Juan's upper body landed on the ground, a few small balls had already landed on the ground, and after a burst of explosion, a thick smoke rolled up. The smoke quickly spread in all directions, and then completely blocked Ryuto's vision, and he couldn't see Juan's actions in front of him. But is this useful? Your hand is still caught by me. Well, it's fine. Just as Ryuto grabbed Juan's wrist and was about to pull him back to beat him up, he suddenly felt his hand become lighter, as if the weight on the other side suddenly disappeared. Good guy, ruthless. After the smoke slowly dissipated, Ryuto looked at the arm in his hand that was cut off at the elbow, and couldn't help but sigh from the bottom of his heart. Because he couldn't break free from Ryuto's grasp, Juan actually cut off his own arm, which was really ruthless. When the smoke dissipated, Huan An's figure had also completely disappeared in front of Ryuto's eyes. In the garden of the Komashiro Imperial Garden, there were only 3 military helicopters burning, and the cat house not far away on the ground covered with rabbit ball. "Old man, are you okay?" At this time, Ryuto walked in front of Rabbit Ball and asked. At least on the surface, Rabbit Ball was indeed in a very bad condition. He was bleeding all over, his eyes were lifeless, and his breathing was weak, as if he was going to the gates of hell in the next moment. You're here." After seeing Ryuto, Rabbit Ball opened his eyes and said earnestly, "I can't go on anymore. The mission to protect Lady Rue Hui and Lady Colored Glaze is... Oh." Before Rabbit Ball finished speaking, Ryuto had already taken out a pill from who knows where and stuffed it into his mouth, and then helped him swallow it. What did you feed me?" "A life-saving medicine. Whether you die or not, it's not up to you, it's up to me, understand?" After casually taking out a life-saving elixir that Wu Hong had eaten before and stuffing it into the rabbit ball, Long Do threw the rabbit ball on the ground and leisurely ran inside to find Rue Hui. As for Rabbit Ball, who was originally lying on the ground waiting for death, the moment the elixir entered his mouth, he felt a warm current flowing through his originally tattered body, and the intense pain immediately lessened by quite a bit. No way. What did he feed me? I don't have to die? What kind of person is this? A god. Looking at Ryuto's back, Rabbit Ball couldn't help but break out in cold sweat. Although he knew that Ryuto was no longer the little extreme Dao young master that he threatened a year ago, he didn't expect this person to become a living god that could even control his own life. Not long after, Ryuto also came to the emergency underground safe room of the Komashiro Imperial Garden, and saw Rue Hui, who was sitting alone with a strange expression, as if she wasn't in a good mood. "Lady Rue Hui, don't worry, the matter outside has been resolved, and there are no casualties." Ryuto sat beside Rue Hui and said in a comforting tone, "Is that so? That's great." Rue Hui slightly raised her eyebrows after hearing this, and turned to look at Ryuto and sneered, "But what I want to know is my cute daughter okay? Her body is relatively weak, so you have to be careful." After being scolded by Lady Rue Hui, Ryuto showed a somewhat awkward expression. After all, when the two were talking on the phone, Lady Rue Hui heard Colored Glaze's angry words on the bed. She must already know what happened over there. His mother-in-law had overheard him having sex with her daughter in front of her, so the situation was somewhat awkward. So Ryuto could only smile bitterly. "That, Lady Rue Hui, actually in fact, you two are in love with each other, and you are young and vigorous. It is reasonable for something to happen. I won't interfere too much, don't worry." Rue Hui's tone was somewhat complicated. Of course, her mood was even more complicated. On one hand, Rue Hui also hoped that her daughter could be happy, but on the other hand, she always felt a little uncomfortable in her heart. When she thought of Ryuto and Colored Glaze being affectionate and sweet together, Rue Hui didn't know who she was envious of. Forget it. Heaven's Eye has already made a move. Next is the decisive battle with Iam. As the master of the Kamiyoshi clan, I shouldn't think about this anymore. After sending the embarrassed Ryuto away, Rue Hui took a deep breath, looked up at the bright moon in the sky, and tried to calm her chaotic heart. Chapter 322. The night of the second day, inside the Heavenly Eye Group headquarters, unrestrained sky tower, a slim figure was walking slowly in the corridor covered with red carpets. Was it because yesterday's new product was too awesome? My waist is a bit sore. This beautiful woman with a cold face opened her rosy lips and yawned as she walked. At the same time, she stretched out her hand to support her slender waist, as if she had gone overboard last night. Just as she pushed open the door and entered a small conference room, there was already a bear-like man in a thick trench coat waiting for her in the conference room. He looked very sturdy. Director Teshima, long time no see. Seeing his old colleague push open the door and enter, the head of the Heavenly Eye Group's weapons department, Nicholas, raised his head and greeted her indifferently. Nicola, the last time I saw you was 2 years ago. The director of the Heavenly Eye Group, Guard Department, Teshima Linhua also nodded and sat on the chair on the right side of Nicola. Speaking of which, although there were 4 directors in this group, there was no friendship between the directors, and they rarely met each other. It was not strange to not see each other once in a year or two. After all, the directors were usually busy with their work. Unless there was really a big event, there were few opportunities and occasions to appear together. Of course, the reverse of this sentence meant that when the ministers appeared together, it would really be accompanied by something big. After taking a seat, Lin Hua looked at the 2 empty seats next to the conference table, as well as the very special throne at the head of the table. He smiled and said, "Speaking of which, Lord Yongji actually called you back this time. She should be serious now. I don't dare to guess what Sama is thinking. I can only say, it's very likely." Just as Nicola and Lin Hua were chatting in the conference room, a middle-aged man with snake-like yellow pupils and a chicken nest on his head also pushed the door and walked in. "Yo, Yomi. I heard that you were poisoned by hell butterfly before. It's not easy to still be alive." When the old man appeared, Nicola said to him with a slightly mocking tone. It was hard to imagine that the relationship between the two was not particularly good. "Humph, how can a mere anesthetic kill this old man?" Hearing this, Huang Quan could not help but grit her teeth. She crossed her arms and sat on the stool. She sneered, "Compared to me, you should be more concerned about the situation of the new head of the intelligence department. He is still lying in the hospital room this morning." The new head of the intelligence department. Isn't he the one who kicked Heavy Fire out not long ago? I think he's called Huan En. What happened to him? Lin Hua had naturally heard about the change in the head of the intelligence department of the Heavenly Eye Group. Before this, the head of the intelligence department had always been the leader of the Black Feather Ninja, Heavy Fire. However, all of a sudden, a young man called Huan En defeated Zhong Hua in a one-on-one duel and seized the position of minister. According to Ling Hua's understanding of the situation, the new minister Huan En should be a very strong person. How could she suddenly enter the ward? Humph. He went to the Komashiro Imperial Garden to cause trouble last night and ended up losing more than 3 armed helicopters. He even broke his own arm and came back. He's a hopeless idiot. When this matter was mentioned, Nicholas couldn't help but scold him. After all, the 3 Apache armed helicopters were painstakingly built by their weapon department. As a result, the idiot Huan En lost them all in one night. He was even better at messing with planes than the Indians. Isn't that right? Now we are still working with the technical staff of the weapon department to install a prosthetic hand for him. This guy has just taken office and hasn't done anything yet. Instead, he has brought us a lot of trouble. At this time, Huang Quan also complained with a tone full of disgust. "Oh, so that's the case. That's really miserable." After hearing the words of the 2 ministers, Lin Hua also roughly understood the general situation. Anyway, it was the new head of the secret department who went to fight with someone and ended up destroying the equipment of the weapons department. He also needed the medical department to treat him and asked the 2 departments to work together to install a prosthetic hand for him. He was indeed a troublesome person. It was no wonder that Nikolai and Yomi didn't treat him well. Clang. But just as the 2 ministers were crazily complaining about the new colleague, the door of the conference room was opened again. The young minister with a bandaged hand and a pale face walked in with heavy steps. After walking in, Huan En didn't say a word. He directly walked over and sat on the empty chair. He didn't even look at the 3 ministers of the other departments. It was as if they were air. Seeing his arrogant look, the hot-tempered Huang Quan couldn't help but ridicule him. "Say, you got yourself into trouble, and you still have the nerve to be so arrogant?" "Humph. My goal has been achieved. Rabutoshi is dead. I was just attacked by Ryuto Kiryu when I was retreating. What kind of trouble is that?" Although from an objective point of view, Huan En was indeed severely beaten up last night, he couldn't say that he didn't complete his mission. After all, Rabutoshi was indeed dead. Or, he thought that Rabutoshi was dead, but in fact, Rabutoshi was just resting. Of course, Nikolai didn't agree with this statement. So he ridiculed him again. Sneak attack? I don't believe you can beat Tong Shang Ryudu in a direct confrontation. I've seen his strength before. Believe it or not, I was just careless at that time. I didn't dodge. After being refuted by his colleague, Huan An's face turned red, but he still tried to defend himself. For a moment, he kept saying things like, he doesn't talk about martial ethics, he didn't fight randomly, and he came prepared. The three of them just treated it as if they were listening to his nonsense, and the meeting room was filled with a cheerful atmosphere. However, just as Huan An, who had lost an arm, was trying her best to defend herself, a crisp sound of high heels could be heard. The lively atmosphere in the conference room came to an abrupt end, and it was as silent as a coffin shop. At this moment, the person who walked out from the other side of the conference room was the most beautiful woman in the world. Regardless of whether it was her appearance, figure, personal temperament, or taste in clothes, there was absolutely no one who would say anything bad about her. Of course, if someone dared to say anything bad about her, then that person would most likely be thrown to the dogs. After all, this was the most beautiful woman in the world, but also the most terrifying woman in the world. Even the 4 ministers of the Heavenly Eye group were nervous when facing their boss. They were like a naughty child who met the teacher without doing homework. Nikolai, Lin Hua, Huang Quan, Huan Nen. Every single person sitting here could be considered a dragon or phoenix among men of this generation. Each of them had experienced countless major events, and their hands were stained with the blood of countless people. But even if the 4 of them were added together, the number of people they killed was definitely not as much as I am, and definitely not as much as the boss of the Heavenly Eye group. Therefore, when Yongji strode with light steps, contentedly walked to her throne that was 1 level higher than the other 4 chairs and sat down, only then did she sweep her bewitching gaze across the 4 people one by one. It's really a pleasant thing to see the 4 of you gathered together. When everyone was at a loss for what to do, Yongji said with a smile, and then gently clapped her hands. The 4 ministers were well aware of their boss's strange and unpredictable words and actions. At this time Yomi, who was the most senior, took the lead and asked, "Lady Iam, you called the 4 of us here, there must be something to announce." "That's right, we have been preparing for the previous plan for so long. Everyone has put in a lot of effort for this. It's time for us to test the results." Test the results? Could it be? When they heard Iam's words, all the ministers widened their eyes and revealed excited expressions at the same time. All the core members of the Heavenly Eye group had always known one thing, and that was that this group was carrying out a plan that could shake the world and definitely change history. And the name of this plan was Enai Honin Temple. The chaos of Honin Temple back then caused Honin Temple to fall into a sea of fire. And this time, Enai Honin Temple wanted to cause all places except Honin Temple to fall into a sea of fire. Therefore, the core of this plan was to destroy Japan. To destroy a country with the power of a group, even if there was a group of capable people led by Iam, it was definitely not an easy job. But fortunately, before this, the 4 major departments had put in enough effort for this plan. Why destroy Japan? Other than Iam, no one knew, but this did not stop them from being excited about this plan. After all, there shouldn't be many normal people who could gather under Yongji's command, and destroying a country was something that would leave a mark in history, so it was natural that they would be attracted to it. It would be able to fully unleash the malice in their hearts. Lin Hua, has the Ministry of Internal Affairs been arranged properly? No problem, enough pawns and substitutes have been placed. Now, most of the people in the Metropolitan Police Department, the Cabinet, and the Parliament are our people. We can do whatever we want. Nikolai, is the weapon to be sent to the Middle East ready? It's ready. They can carry out a magnificent war there at any time to attract the attention of the world there. I guarantee that the United Nations will have a splitting headache. Yomi, has the production line for mass production of Hell Butterfly been completed? It can start. If necessary, it can be sent to the world's black market in large quantities. At that time, the cities of the entire Western world will be in chaos. Huan En, how's the preparation for the assassination of the leaders of the various countries? It was Chonghua who was in charge of this before, right? Lord Iam, this matter is still being arranged by Chonghua. He will participate in the plan as my best assistant. I can guarantee that when the time comes, none of the people who deserve to die will escape. Very good. Seeing that the ministers of the 4 major departments under her were fully prepared, Iam waved her hand and smiled. Now, I hereby announce that the Ni Hanan Temple plan will officially start from today. Whoa, 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 whoa. With Iam Tenmu and the 4 ministers rallying arms, the Tenmu group that had already started operating behind them began to slowly float up like a huge submarine from the bottom of the bottomless strait to the surface of the water. And the moment they all surfaced, it was also the moment the world was enveloped in the flames of war. Chapter 323. Winter in Tokyo was a pure white winter. When it was December, a light snow seemed to have sprayed the surrounding houses and the ground with a thin layer of white film. It looked white and shiny, clean and beautiful. But Ryuto was not in a good mood, because he was in trouble. 1 month after the attack on the Komashiro Imperial Garden, Uni Senpai came to him with a very special message. Ryuto, come here, I have something to tell you. That morning, when Ryuto came to school to slack off, Yunyen mysteriously pulled him to a corner of the school. You have something to tell me? What's going on? Why are you being so secretive? At this time, the first class was about to start. The teaching building was secluded and there was no one around. Yunyen, on the other hand, had a strange look on her face as she pulled Long Daodu to an empty space behind the teaching building. Yunyen, if you have something to say, just say it. Do you want me to help you read again? Because he was busy this month, Ryuto hadn't read Yunyen's novel for a long time. No matter how he looked at it, it didn't look like a novel written by a normal person. Since the golden heron Iwasaki Yanasuk passed away a month ago, Rue Hui and Colored Glaze quickly used their family's relationship with Iwasaki Reiko to swallow up all of the golden heron's assets, and received an astronomical amount of money. After that, Rue Hui, who had money, connections, and influence, struck while the iron was hot. She quickly proposed a proposal to promote Gong Si to the new Golden Heron. She even hired the Black Hand Alliance to use countless dirty tricks to push Gong Si up. But it wasn't over yet. Although Kyoji became the Golden Heron of the Yatsuki, he still needed someone to fill the Dark Crow position. Therefore, Colored Glaze took a liking to Ryuto's other father-in-law, Saito Takahiro. As the head of the Saito Club, Takahiro had the qualifications to join the Yatsuki. It was just that Takahiro was too lazy to deal with those people, so he didn't join them. But even so, after Ryuto and Dunia's persuasion, Takahiro successfully entered the Yatsuki, and successfully took another Dark Crow position. After all this, the Yatsuki could be said to have been infiltrated by Ryuto's forces. Rue Hui, Kyoji, and Takahiro all held important positions in the Yatsuki, and they were constantly trying to recruit other forces. A month later, the Black Hand Alliance, Kamiyoshi Clan, Tsukujiri Group, and Saito Club began to fully display the power of the Iron Four Corners. Black Hand Alliance, Kamiyoshi Clan, Tsukujiri Group, and Saito Club began to fully display the power of the Black Hand Alliance, Kamiyoshi Clan, Tsukujiri Group, and Saito Club. In this case, Ryuto's side naturally made a lot of money, and there were a lot of things to worry about. Recently, every day was happy, until Yunyen suddenly came to the door. At this time, why was Yunyen so nervous to find Ryuto? Seeing that there was no one around, Yunyen boldly said, what I'm going to say next, don't be afraid. Afraid? Ryuto laughed and said, you really know how to joke. Who doesn't know that I, Ryuto Kiryu, am full of courage? There shouldn't be many things in this world that can make me afraid. The reason why Ryuto said this was not to brag, because now his courage had reached the level of LV5 courage, Extreme Superman, and he really wouldn't be afraid of certain things. However, not being afraid didn't mean that he wouldn't be shocked. Then I'll say it. Say it, don't worry, even if the sky falls, I'll help you. I'm pregnant. What? The moment he heard those words, Long Do was stunned for a moment. Then, he suddenly leaped into the air and did a 720-degree spin in the air. After landing from a height of 3 meters, he quickly reached out and hugged Yunyan's shoulder, and asked nervously, You. What did you say? Are you really pregnant? Are you sure? The reason why Ryuto was so surprised was not unreasonable. After all, although he had been having sex with Yunyan since a month ago, they had been very honest and took protective measures every time. How could she suddenly be pregnant? Speaking of which, the only time Ryuto didn't take protective measures was the night in Moscow with Dunya. In the end, Dunya seemed to be fine, but Yunyan, who had been very safe, was pregnant? Wasn't this too bizarre? If it weren't for the fact that Ryuto had always believed in Yunyan's words, he would even suspect that he had been cheated on and that this child was not his. But when it came to why she was pregnant, Yunyan said in an awkward tone, I've already gone to the hospital for a checkup, and it's confirmed that I'm pregnant. Speaking of which, this matter is actually related to Sister Lin Hannah. Lin Hannah Tijima? What does it have to do with that girl? Can she help me get you pregnant? Something like that. Actually, after I found out that I was pregnant last night, I also asked Sister Lin Hannah, and then she said. What did she say? She said that when she met us in Paris and went into the room with us, she secretly used a needle to pierce a hole in the box of toys we bought. That's why it's like this. Island. Lin. Hua. Is there something wrong with your brain? Hearing this, Ryuto couldn't help but reach out and cover his head. He secretly cursed that perverted woman 100 times in his heart. Psycho, other than psycho, Ryuto really didn't know how to describe Lin Hannah. Why did she want to stab someone else's condom with a needle? Did she want to have a nephew so badly? Great, that perverted Lin Hannah really succeeded. Yunyan was really pregnant. But now, no matter who it was meaningless to blame anyone. Both of them had to face reality. Some time ago, Yunyan had just celebrated her 18th birthday. In a few months, she would graduate from this Dory No. 1 high school and step into society to start on her own path as a writer. But this unexpected pregnancy suddenly messed up Yunyan's life steps. Before she could have the identity of a writer, she already had the new identity of a mother-to-be. No, I'm a man. At this time, I have to stand up. After taking a deep breath, Ryuto reached out and hugged Yunyan into his arms. He comforted her softly. If you're pregnant, then so be it. Let's find a time to get the marriage certificate and have a wedding ceremony. It can be considered as an explanation to your parents. In Ryuto's view, since he did such a thing to someone else's daughter, then as a man, he must be responsible. There was no need to talk about getting the marriage certificate. He also had to have a grand wedding ceremony to let the woman feel that her 10 months of suffering was worth it. He also had to take care of her for the rest of her life. This was the responsibility of a man. But when he thought of the murderous expression on his father-in-law's face after this matter was exposed, Ryuto couldn't help but sigh. And what made him sigh even more was, at this time, Yunyan, who was leaning in Ryuto's arms, raised her head and said with a worried tone, If we get married, what about colored glaze and Dunya? That's right, compared to his father-in-law who was difficult to appease, Ryuto needed to appease colored glaze and Dunya more. In fact, before this, Ryuto had already thought of a solution for himself and his 3 harem. That was to change nationality and run to Saudi Arabia, UAE, Qatar, and other countries that allowed polygamy to get married. After all, marriage was the most important thing in a woman's life. They all hoped to have an unforgettable wedding. They definitely didn't want to follow their husband without any status. So Ryuto had already decided to take the 3 women out of this country to get married abroad after settling Iam's matter. Unfortunately, it seemed like it was too late now. Recently, there were many things happening. According to Colored Glaze's information, the Heavenly Eye Group's actions were becoming more and more obvious. They didn't give Ryuto time to bring them out to change nationality and have a wedding ceremony. However, Yunyan's stomach was about to get bigger. What should I do? Forget it, I have to let them know anyway. It's better to discuss it with Colored Glaze and Dunya. Based on the idea that everyone had the right to know, Ryuto planned to meet the two women at his house in the evening. He planned to have a small family meeting to settle this matter openly. But at this moment, Yunyen took the initiative to say, "Let me tell them. After all, this is the trouble created by Sister Linhua. It's not your fault." What if the two of them get angry? Seeing that I'm pregnant, even if they get angry, they probably won't do anything to me. Speaking of this, Yunyen confidently stuck out her belly that didn't have any ups and downs. Although there was a new life in it, at least from the outside, it was completely impossible to tell. Seeing that Yunyen was so insistent, Ryuto also agreed to let her take the initiative to inform the two of this happy event. The location was at the lunch meeting at noon. During this period, Ryuto and Colored Glaze often didn't come to school because of their busy work. However, it just so happened that they didn't have anything to do these 2 days, so Colored Glaze also obediently stayed in school at this time. Of course, even so, Colored Glaze definitely didn't expect that this lunch meeting at noon where Ryuto was absent would have such a big issue. "Both of you. Because of some things, I accidentally got pregnant. I'm very sorry." Just when Yunyen lowered her head to Colored Glaze and Dunya very apologetically, the two women were stunned at the same time. Then, their attitude was completely different from what Yunyen had thought before. "Pregnant? Really? That's amazing." The first to react was Dunya. She hurriedly ran to Yunyen's side and leaned her little head on Yunyen's belly, as if she wanted to listen to the fetal movement in the belly. "Are you an idiot? How can a 1-month-old baby have fetal movement?" After seeing Dunya's reaction, Colored Glaze first ridiculed her, then calmly congratulated Yunyen. "Congratulations, I hope the child can be born healthy." Although her reaction was quite different from Dunya's, from Colored Glaze's tone and attitude, she obviously wasn't dissatisfied with Yunyen's pregnancy. This completely exceeded Yunyen's expectations. Chapter 324. What's going on? Aren't the two of them always fighting to be the first in all aspects, unwilling to fall behind others? Why did they react so gently to my cheating behavior? In the beginning, Yunyen thought that Colored Glaze and Dunya would have some complaints when they found out that she was pregnant. At the very least, it was inevitable that they would complain a little. But she didn't expect that the two of them would have such an attitude, as if they weren't jealous at all. "What? You don't think I'm jealous of you, do you?" As if sensing Yunyen's surprise, Colored Glaze couldn't help but laugh. "Only Dunya would do this kind of thing. I'm not that narrow-minded." "Huh? What the hell? Is it okay to shoot at me?" Dunya obviously didn't like to hear this, so she raised her head from Yunyen's stomach and replied in a disdainful tone, "The person who would do this kind of thing is obviously you, a woman with a heart as small as a sesame seed." "Heart as small as a sesame seed? You actually have the face to say such things? 2 weeks ago, I borrowed Ryuto from you for a while, and you pissed me off for 3 days. You haven't done this kind of thing before? Didn't I take your favorite dish at the dinner party a month ago, and you were all kinds of sarcastic behind my back? Bringing up old scores, right? 3 months ago. Percent at. Yen asterisk at hashtag yen hashtag asterisk. You're the one bringing up old scores. Clearly 6 months ago. Hashtag at. Hashtag yen at hashtag asterisk percent. 9 months ago. UXXXXX. 1 year ago. UXXXXX. Seeing the two sisters quarrel in front of her again, Yunyen forced herself not to say, "Stop quarreling, I think the two of you are really narrow-minded," but she also understood why the two of them didn't hold a grudge against her for secretly getting pregnant. The reason was very simple, because the one who was pregnant this time was Yunyen, and not Colored Glaze or Dunya, so they weren't jealous. After all, Yunyen was very popular, and everyone liked her. And now, in Ryuto's harem group of 3, Colored Glaze and Dunya were the type that naturally clashed. One was a smart Japanese beauty, while the other was a martial artist. One was an intelligent Japanese beauty, while the other was a martial artist. Even the things they liked to eat were different. Colored Glaze liked to eat fish, shrimp, crab, and other seafood, while Dunia liked to eat pancakes, sour cream, and barbecue, and both of them disdainful of each other's recipes. Fish, shrimp, crab? So disgusting, how could they eat it? Bye. Dunia pancakes with pancakes? Barbecue? Isn't that too? Bye. Colored glaze. In this kind of situation, the two of them had conflicts everywhere, but fortunately, Yunyan was in the middle to act as a buffer, so they could barely get by. Speaking of which, Yunyan was the kind of person who didn't have any special strengths, and didn't have any special preferences. To put it bluntly, she wasn't good at anything, and only had the charm of a witch. But it was also this kind of Yunyan that could be the all-purpose lubricant in a team, making everyone like her. Even when she secretly got pregnant, Colored Glaze and Dunia sincerely congratulated her. On the other hand, if either Colored Glaze or Dunia got pregnant first, then the other would definitely flip the table in anger. Then it would become a civil war. But although the pregnancy didn't cause any problems, the two of them always quarreling was really a little troublesome. Seeing Colored Glaze and Dunia start to quarrel again, Yunyan, who was sitting at lunch, couldn't help but sigh. Speaking of which, is there any way to improve their relationship? Unknowingly, Yunyan started to think about this question in her mind. After all, they were going to live together as a family of 4. If two of them quarreled every day, then it was a kind of family misfortune, and they definitely wouldn't be happy every day. What should I do? Right. Why don't I take this opportunity to have a party at Ryuto's place? Everyone can happily quarrel for a night, and if we can relieve some of the tension, their relationship should improve a lot. Thinking of this, Yunyan smiled and said to the two of them, Stop, do you want to have a party at Ryuto's place tonight to celebrate the birth of my son? Birth of your son? Isn't your son still in your stomach? You don't seem to be able to describe it as a birth of your son. Just as Yunyan finished speaking, Colored Glaze and Dunia ridiculed at the same time, and then fiercely glared at each other. You two. If only you could have such tacit understanding. After secretly sighing, Yunyan convinced the two of them to attend the party tonight, and she told this news to Ryuto, who was a little troubled because he suddenly became a father. A party in my room? To improve the relationship between Colored Glaze and Dunia's relationship? This seems to be possible. Ryuto nodded at this time, and in his mind, he also remembered the glorious daily quarrels between Colored Glaze and Dunia, the beautiful sisters. However, if they were going to have a gathering, then it would be better to prepare some snacks, drinks, and alcohol. Although Senior Yunyan was currently pregnant and could not drink alcohol, those two fellows were still able to drink. As the saying goes, if you drink too much, you'll play with money. If you want to quickly improve the relationship, 3 to 5 glasses of alcohol, and a few heartfelt words from the drunken stupor would definitely have a good positive effect. I've decided to get some alcohol, and tonight, I'll get Colored Glaze and Dunia drunk together, and let them speak the truth after drinking, and become good brothers after drinking. At the thought of this, Long Do immediately arranged for his assistant, Ming Hai, to buy the necessary supplies for the party. In particular, the drinks had to be sufficient, and they had to be the kind that ladies could drink. Then, they waited for the night to come. Just like this, when night fell, a very festive scene appeared in Ryuto's room. Colored Glaze, Yunyan, and Dunia, the 3 girls, very punctually came together to Ryuto's room, and at this time, a large table was placed in the middle of the room, and the table was filled with all kinds of snacks, drinks, party games, and so on, a very standard party scene. Whoa! This situation looks quite fresh. Seeing the 3 girls come together to his bedroom, Ryuto, who had never seen this scene before, couldn't help but nod slightly, and the corner of his mouth raised into an excited arc. During this period of time, whether it was Colored Glaze, Yunyan, or Dunia, they had all been on the bed in this bedroom, resting. But even so, it was the first time that the 3 of them appeared here together. Especially when Ryuto saw the big bed next to the table, and then looked at the 3 figures who had slept on the bed one after another, an evil thought emerged in his mind. Speaking of which, my bed is also quite big, if the 3 of them can sleep together. Hee! Creak! But just when Ryuto was thinking of something like sleeping together, accompanied by a creaking sound, Dunya suddenly jumped toward the bed. "Oh, I'm so tired. This bed is still the most comfortable to lie on, hee hee." After taking off her shoes, Dunya, who was wearing a gothic dress and lace stockings, curled up on Ryuto's bed, and raised her small feet and rolled on the bed while hugging the pillow, as if she was occupying her territory. Seeing Dunya occupying the bed she slept on, Colored Glaze on the side couldn't help but quickly stop her. "Come down, it's rude." "Hey! You're not the owner here. What right do you have to say that I'm rude?" "You." Colored Glaze, who was choked by Dunya, was naturally unconvinced, so she quickly took off her shoes and jumped onto the bed, occupying the other half of the bed that the petite body couldn't occupy. "Ah! You're a smart one. Shameless. Who's learning from you when I was lying on this bed? Who knows where you were playing with mud? So what if you came early? At least you didn't come late." Chatter, crackle, crackle. Seeing these two girls quarreling over his bed, Ryuto could only use a helpless tone to say to them, "Can you two stop arguing? Look at Yunyen, she..." "Wait. I have a share of this bed too. You can't exclude me." Before Ryuto could finish his words, Yunyen, who was next to him, quickly threw off her shoes and rushed to the bed in a loose dress, as if she was afraid that she wouldn't have a place to lie down if she was late. "Are you kidding me? Yunyen is here too? And these guys? Is fighting for territory that fun?" Seeing the three girls pushing and fighting on the bed, Ryuto didn't know whether to laugh or cry at first, but not long after, his eyes were fixed on them. Well, how should I put it? After going through the initial chaotic battle and entering the stage of close combat, the current situation on the bed was really pleasing to the eye. Colored Glaze, Yunyen, and Dunya were already absolute beauties. Now that they were lying, and sitting together on the bed, it was inevitable that one would see their dresses flipped up and their slender legs entwined with each other. Especially those 3 pairs of beautiful legs. It was really amazing. Needle-free, needle-free, needle-free. Among the 3 girls, Yunyen was the tallest. Her legs were also the longest, the fleshiest, the most voluptuous, and the best to touch. At this time, those voluptuous legs were wrapped in skin-tight nude stockings, rubbing on the bed, quilt, and pillow, easily attracting the attention of others. Of course, in terms of attracting attention, Colored Glaze and Dunya were not far behind. Although these two's legs weren't as voluptuous as Yunyen's, they each had their own unique characteristics. The former's advantage was in its boniness, while the latter's advantage was in its petite size. Colored Glaze's legs were in between the other two, but because of her slender figure, those straight and slender legs looked very bony. Especially when paired with the black stockings that she often wore, it completely outlined the perfect shape of her legs, making people unable to help but want to hold her in their arms and caress her. Dunya's legs were a little short, but because her body was petite, her legs that looked short were especially cute. Paired with the gothic white lace stockings that she wore today, it brought out her petite and cute side to the extreme, making people want to put them in their mouth and taste them. Speaking of which, Ryuto had seen the legs of the 3 beauties, and played with them from various angles, but he had never seen such a feeling of 3 flowers at one's prominence, 3 elements in one, and 3 parts of the world. 3 different pairs of beautiful legs, respectively wearing nude, black, and white stockings, were even entangled and rubbing against each other on the bed. That beautiful scene really made Long Do almost unable to resist the urge to directly pounce on them and have a good time with them. But he couldn't. If Ryuto really pounced on them now, there was a high chance that he would be beaten up by both Colored Glaze and Dunya, so he had to be patient and wait for the right time to make his move. Chapter 325. In the beginning, Ryuto organized this gathering to improve the relationship between Colored Glaze and Dunya. Now that he saw such a tempting scene, his purpose of organizing this gathering changed mysteriously. It became improve the relationship between Colored Glaze and Dunya so that they can accept sleeping together. At the thought of these 3 beauties resting here together, and at the thought of being entangled with a bunch of beautiful legs and arms early in the morning, Long Do felt that something was wrong with his entire being. How can I improve their relationship quickly and take advantage of them? I got it. Looking at the pile of poker cards on the table not far away, Ryuto suddenly had an evil idea. and that was the King's Game. The King's Game was a popular party game among the young people here, and the game required poker cards. If there were 4 people participating, then a total of 5 cards, A, 2, 3, 4, and Joker, would be drawn for each of the 4 people to draw. After drawing, the person who drew the Joker would be the king. If no one drew the Joker, then it would be a walkover. And the king could choose any 2 players from 1 to 4 to do anything without looking at the other's numbers. For example, if the king ordered number 2 and number 4 to kiss, then the 2 players who drew number 2 and number 4 would have to do it in front of everyone. Of course, although the Joker could order others at will, the king himself was not an absolutely safe position. After all, there were 5 cards on the table, and after the other 4 people drew, the last card left on the table would be the king's number, and the king would not know what his number was. In other words, after the king ordered number 2 and number 4 to kiss, he would find out that number 2 was his card left on the table. Then it would be awkward. But this King's Game was special in that other than Ryuto, the other 3 participants were all beautiful girls, so there was no awkwardness. Anyway, Ryuto would not lose out no matter what he did with the other 3, and he would not lose out no matter what the other 3 did, so he would definitely be the final winner, he. Therefore, Ryuto quickly promoted this wonderful game to the 3 people on the bed, and then, he was immediately met with 2 pairs of eyes. You actually suggested this game, since you can take advantage of them however you want, you won't lose out, right? Although Colored Glaze had never played the King's Game before, after hearing the rules, she roughly knew what Ryuto, this old pervert, wanted to do. That's right, if you become the king, you will definitely give out some perverted orders, who would want to play this game with you. It's fine in private. The last 6 words were whispered by Dunya. If it was in private, it was not like she couldn't accompany Ryuto if he gave out some perverted orders, but there were 2 other people here. Once she thought about being intimate with Ryuto under the gaze of the other 2, Dunya felt goosebumps all over her body, and she couldn't accept this. At this time, Yunyen obviously understood Ryuto's meaning, so she supported him by saying, "Don't say that, it doesn't have to be Ryuto who becomes the king, if the 3 of us become the king, we can embarrass him." Embarrass him? Yes, for example, let him use his nose to dance in circles on the plate, or learn to bark like a puppy, ah. Let Ryuto hold. Thinking about that strange scene, Colored Glaze and Dunya couldn't help but laugh. Okay, let's play then. Yes, I have no objections. As if they were convinced by Yunyen's humorous description, the 2 of them, one civil and one martial, agreed to the request to start the King's Game. Before starting the game, Luli even carefully checked the playing cards used for the game, wanting to see if Long Do, this rascal, had cheated on the cards. She only felt relieved after discovering that it was a new deck of cards. But what Colored Glaze didn't expect was that Ryuto didn't need to cheat in this way, because he had an item called Rogue's X-ray lens. Rogue's X-ray lens, as a contact lens, can be used to see through things within a certain range, such as seeing through the contents of other people's cabinets. Naturally, it was easy to see through the playing cards. In other words, in this King's Game, who is the king, who is the number, Ryuto knows everything. He, you 2 want me to bark like a dog, I'll let you know how the word, death, is written. When Ryuto and the other 3 sat around the table, and Yunyen was responsible for shuffling the cards, Ryuto's heart was already blooming with joy. The first round of the King's Game begins. Oh. Following senior sister Yunyen's command, the 4 of them reached out and grabbed a covered card from the table. TSK. The moment they saw the cards, Colored Glaze and Dunya couldn't help but pout, because the 2 of them grabbed 1 and 4 respectively, neither of them was the king. As for who had the King's Clown card, thank you. At this time, Ryuto casually raised the clown card in his hand and showed a happy expression to the 3 girls at the table. Humph, what a lucky guy, hurry up and give the order. If that's the case, then number 1 and number 4 will drink half a glass of wine each. If it's Yunyen, replace it with bitter gourd drink. Because Yunyen was pregnant and couldn't drink, the rules of the game were lenient to her, but the other 2 weren't so lucky. When she heard that the punishment was to drink, Colored Glaze's face suddenly turned sour, but Dunya was relieved and smiled, "It's just half a glass of wine, no problem." One had to know that Dunya was a little alcoholic who could drink 50 to 60% vodka like water. Half a glass of vodka was nothing to her. Don't be happy too early. Colored Glaze wants to drink this kind of wine. You'll drink this. Under Dunya's stunned gaze, Ryuto threw a bottle of 96% life water on the table in front of Dunya. 96%. After seeing this, even Dunya couldn't help but swallow a mouthful of saliva. How is this wine? It's already higher than medical alcohol. Is this something humans drink? Even Dunya frowned when she saw it. But it had to be like this. After all, everyone's alcohol tolerance was different. If he let Colored Glaze and Dunya drink the same wine, then it wouldn't be considered a punishment, it would just be a one-sided punishment for Colored Glaze. Of course, for Colored Glaze who didn't usually drink, half a glass of wine was already terrible, even if the wine was really good. This wine tastes good. It's not as bad as I imagined. After half a glass of wine slid down her throat, Colored Glaze couldn't help but lick her lips, recalling the feeling of the cold and fruity taste that filled her throat and nose. In the beginning, when Colored Glaze heard that Ryuto wanted her to drink wine, this young lady was somewhat afraid. After all, for Colored Glaze who didn't drink, wine was pungent, choking, and spicy. It was hard to imagine that there was wine in the world that was so suitable for a lady to drink. After Ryuto's careful selection, the sparkling wine that Colored Glaze drank was sweet and not greasy. The alcohol content was only about 5%. It was very suitable for a lady who drank wine for the first time, so Colored Glaze drank half a glass without much effort. But even if that half a glass of wine was good, wine was still wine, after all, and Colored Glaze's little face became a little redder after drinking it. On the other side, Dunya, who drank half a glass of water of life, was even more miserable. She felt as if her throat was going to spit fire. She could only hurriedly grab some snacks and stuff them into her mouth. Because of the party, Narukai also prepared many snacks to go with the wine, including cheese sticks, crab rolls, dried fish, grilled shrimp, small tomatoes, and so on. At a glance, it was obvious that it went well with the wine. Phew! Colored Glaze and Dunya put down their wine glasses at almost the same time, and shouted to Ryuto, "Continue! Quickly begin! This time, I must take down the king, humph!" When it was Ryuto's turn to shuffle the cards, the two unlucky girls hurriedly reached out to grab the table, and after grabbing it, they looked as if the sky had fallen and the earth had cracked open. This time, Dunya was a 3, Colored Glaze was a 4, and neither of them were kings. "Yay, I'm the king, ha ha ha." And King Yunyen, who got the Joker card, jumped up happily. But before Yunyen gave the order, she felt a hand quietly touch her leg under the table, and wrote a 3 and a 4 on it. Was it Ryuto? This number is... Ah, I understand, hee hee. Then, Yunyen smiled and said, "Then please hug number 3 and number 4 face to face for a minute, immediately." Hug. Who's number 4? Hug. Who's number 3? As soon as the two finished speaking, they looked at each other and shouted, "It's you?" "TSK." After shouting, Colored Glaze and Dunya couldn't help but turn their faces away, as if they didn't want to hug her at all. What a joke, face-to-face hug, and a full minute. Who would do that? But at this moment, Ryuto casually ridiculed, "The king's order is absolute. You two can't afford to play, right?" Of course not, let's hug. What's there to be afraid of? Let's play, humph." Since Ryuto said so, Colored Glaze and Dunya could only hug each other with a look of disdain. Oh, this girl smells pretty good, and she's also very soft to hug. No wonder Ryuto likes to hug her. When Colored Glaze reached out to hug Dunya's petite body, smelling the vodka mixed with milk fragrance on her body, and feeling the smooth and soft skin, even Colored Glaze couldn't help but think so. What's this smell? It smells like some kind of flower fragrance, and I feel so happy all of a sudden. And when Dunya reached out to hug Colored Glaze's slender waist, and leaned her head on the classic young lady's shoulder, even Dunya couldn't help but think so. This was the first time. The two had quarreled a lot, but this was the first time they hugged each other so intimately. After a minute, when Colored Glaze and Dunya separated, their expressions changed a little, and they didn't dare to look at each other's face, as if they were a little shy. Originally, the two drank a little, and now they were in a slightly tipsy state, and after hugging for a minute, they were a little dizzy. However, something even more embarrassing happened in the next round of the game. When Ryuto drew the Joker card again, he grinned and said in an excited tone, "I'm the king, I order number 1 and number 2, to kiss." Chapter 326. Number 1 and number 2, kiss. The moment they heard this command, Colored Glaze and Dunia couldn't help but tremble. But when they looked at the cards in their hands, they found that they had number 3 and number 4 respectively. Only then did they let out a sigh of relief. Wait. If that's the case, then number 1 and number 2 are... I'm number 1. Aya, Ryuto, Kuen, you're number 2 yourself. What a coincidence. When Yunyen flipped over the king's number card on the table, she raised the poker card in her hand and waved it slightly at Ryuto. Is that so? Then it's Yunyen and my turn to be punished. So, Ryuto quickly came in front of Yunyen and slowly pressed his cheek against hers. No way. Is he really going to kiss her? Seeing Ryuto and Yunyen's face getting closer and closer, Colored Glaze and Dunia who were next to them felt their scalps tingle. For the two of them, kissing under the gaze of two other people was really a scene that was not inferior to a public execution. If it really happened, it would be very difficult to accept. Naturally, Long Do knew this as well. That was why he didn't choose the two girls to kiss each other during the first kissing segment of the King's Game. Instead, he chose to pull senior sister Yunyen, who was more open, into the kiss. Unlike the two of them, Yunyen's personality was not afraid of kissing in front of others. She might even enjoy this kind of situation. In the next moment, Ryuto kissed Yunyen. The soft and smooth jelly-like texture made him feel very comfortable. And Yunyen obviously enjoyed it. She even took the initiative to reach out and wrap her arms around Ryuto's neck. Soon, she began to take the initiative. When Yunyen also began to counterattack, the heated scene suddenly stunned Colored Glaze and Dunia. Unlike Yunyen, who was used to taking the initiative, the two of them were usually the passive party when they were intimate with Ryuto. They rarely did this kind of action. So Yunyen and Ryuto are usually like this? That's amazing. So, seeing the two of them fighting fiercely, Colored Glaze reached out to cover her eyes while peeking through the gaps between her fingers. Dunia directly stared at them with her eyes wide open. Pop. After an unknown amount of time, number 1 and number 2 finally let go of each other's lips. Then, they looked at each other sweetly and sat back in their seats. At this time, Colored Glaze and Dunia, who had been watching from the side, were already blushing. It was as if they were even more embarrassed than Yunyen herself. Yunyen, on the other hand, turned her head with a smile and said, "Okay, let's continue the game. Next, it's Dunia's turn to shuffle and deal." Okay. Not sure if it was because she saw Yunyen's slightly red lips, Dunia's body couldn't help but tremble. Then, she dealt the cards very stiffly. In the first 2 rounds of the King's Game, Ryuto and Yunyen were the victors. Logically speaking, it should be Dunia and Colored Glaze's turn to be the King's Game. However, that was not the case. The 3rd round, the 4th round, the 5th round, the 6th round. In almost every round of the King's Game, either Yunyen or Ryuto won. The other two basically didn't win, but they were punished the most. After an hour, Colored Glaze and Dunia had already drunk 3 or 4 glasses of wine. They hugged each other once, rolled around on the bed once, carried each other once, confessed once, combed each other's hair once, held each other's hands once. Anyway, it was basically done by them. It was almost time. These two should be drunk soon. Looking at Colored Glaze and Dunia, who were already drunk, Ryuto gave Yunyen a look. After taking down the King's Game, he ordered, "Next, let's invite number 1 and number 4. Kiss while filming. Film while filming. Kiss while filming." When she heard this order, Colored Glaze, who was holding the number 1 card in her hand, was stunned. Then she looked at Dunia, who had taken out the number 4 card in her hand. Although she had drunk a lot now and wasn't very clear-headed, Colored Glaze still couldn't help but feel a chill all over her body. After all, although Colored Glaze was no longer a girl, the person she kissed was only Ryuto. When did she do such an intimate action with others? Even though Dunya was a woman, this kind of intimate mouth-to-mouth action was still a very sensitive thing. Even her best friends wouldn't do such a thing. What's more, the relationship between the two wasn't very good. It could even be said that they didn't see eye to eye. Wouldn't it be too awkward to let these two women kiss and even film a video of it? So Colored Glaze quickly waved her hand and said, "Wait. Wait. I'm a little tired. Can this king's game end here?" "You can, but you have to finish this round of punishment. You're not planning to deny it, are you?" "I'm not planning to deny it, but the problem is that this kind of thing—" Before Colored Glaze could finish her words, Dunya's drunk little head suddenly appeared beside her. Whoosh! Then two seemingly slender arms, which actually contained a lot of strength, hugged Colored Glaze's waist from behind and threw her to the bed next to her. Plop! Accompanied by a muffled sound, Colored Glaze was thrown onto the bed dizzily. At the same time, Dunya jumped onto the bed and supported herself on top of her, giggling, You can't be scared, right? So timid, It's over. This bastard is drunk. She doesn't know what she's doing." Seeing Dunya's blurred eyes and flushed cheeks, Luli knew that she must be completely delirious right now. Presumably, she hadn't been able to endure the devastation of the 96-degree water of life. Although Colored Glaze wasn't any better, she still had some rationality. She gritted her teeth and said, "Are you crazy? Is this something you can play with?" Why not? Didn't Ryuto and Yunyen just kiss? How are they the same as us? In the next second, Dunya had already lowered her cute little head. Her rose-red lips were less than 5 centimeters away from Colored Glaze. At this distance, the two could see all the details on each other's face, including long eyelashes, delicate skin, gentle pupils, etc. So cute. Her skin is so white, almost transparent. It's so wonderfully smooth. It's even smoother than tofu and jelly. Although Colored Glaze was usually unhappy when she saw Dunya, at this distance, she couldn't help but admire her old rival's stunning appearance. Originally, in terms of appearance, Dunya was the most beautiful of the three women, especially that flawless face of hers that was like a porcelain doll. It was enough to mesmerize Lioli, who was also a woman, just by looking at her. Seeing that the two were already in position, Ryuto also took out his phone and set it to recording mode. He said to the two girls on the bed, "Ready, counting down 3, 2. Hearing this, Colored Glaze, who was immersed in Dunya's pretty face, finally reacted. She hurriedly shouted to the side, "Hey! Wait! Are you crazy? Are you really planning to 1. Chirp?" As Ryuto's last word fell, Colored Glaze only felt a blur in front of her eyes. A smooth and delicate touch like wine and jelly was already pressed against her mouth. For a moment, Colored Glaze, who was almost kissed by force, couldn't help but struggle. But with her physical fitness, how could she move a little monster like Dunya away? It would only make her a laughing stock. But how to put it, after being kissed by Dunya for a few seconds, Colored Glaze couldn't help but feel her head heat up. Unknowingly, she was immersed in this special way of contact. So fragrant, so soft. It's completely different from when she was with Ryuto. Is this a girl? When Colored Glaze also reached out and wrapped her arms around Dunya's neck, and even began to wrap around her, Ryuto knew that his plan had succeeded. Whether it was under the influence of alcohol, under the shroud of this gaming atmosphere, or because they were already familiar with the bed, it was possible that some memories were brought back. In short, these two ladies who were usually incompatible like fire and water became one, and physically became one. Oh, that's amazing. It actually made the two of them so passionate. Looking at the exceptionally beautiful painting on the bed, even Yunyen couldn't help but cover her mouth with her hand and said in a surprised tone. If someone told her before that Colored Glaze and Dunya would do such a thing, Yunyan would definitely think that person was crazy and spouting nonsense. But now that the reality had happened in front of her, she could only sigh at how deep Ryuto's tricks were. He actually led the two of them step by step into the abyss covered with lilies. He, now that there's video evidence, if they quarrel again in the future, I'll play this video for them to see. Let's see if they still have the face to continue quarreling. As Long Do spoke, he looked at his phone. The video on his phone was still recording the battle of words between the two of them. It was really intense. Looking at it, Yunyan couldn't help but feel her body heat up. She reached out and hugged Ryuto's waist from behind, and laughed softly in his ear. How about, we do it too? Aren't you pregnant? You can't be too excited in the first trimester and the second trimester. It's okay, kissing is fine too, hee. This woman is really a vixen. After hearing Yunyan's chuckle in his ear, Ryuto couldn't help but carry her to the bed. As the bed curtain fell, the light dissipated, and the dark room gradually turned into a different kind of battlefield. As for what happened in this different kind of darkness, it was naturally the blooming of the lilies. Then, a man-eating flower swallowed 2 lilies together, and there was a rose cheering on the side. It was that simple. You're tuning in to the Narrate and Escape YouTube channel. Don't forget to subscribe and join us on this journey to catch the most captivating stories.